At LBS, we focus on producing high potential professionals and stress the importance of ethics and management as a service. Our welcoming First Point Information Center, where we provide information on starting your LBS adventure. Wi-Fi enabled library is equipped with the best curated learning resources on a whole range of subject areas in business, and it has over 6,000 physical resources, 1 million electronic resources accessible 24 hours a day. The library also features a 24-seater computer room for users. Bloomberg Room has 12 terminals where students, executive participants, and faculty can have access to world-renowned financial databases and market data such as opening and closing prices for the international market, forex, and commodities. The International Management Research Center, IMRC, is built to support the school's goal of conducting research that would impact the business world. The three major research centers are LBS Sustainability Center, Christopher Colade Center for Research in Leadership and Ethics, and Sustainable and Inclusive Digital Financial Services. The IMRC building is conceived as a green building, making significant use of natural daylight, proper orientation, and shading, thus saving on electricity consumption. Our ultra-modern classrooms are equipped with the best facilities to accommodate traditional and hybrid learning for our MBA, DBA, and executive programs. The classrooms are Wi-Fi enabled, just as the rest of the school. The layout of the classrooms currently complies with COVID-19 regulations. Because we only source for the very best faculty staff, we ensure that they have the best space equipped with state-of-the-art facilities and resources to enable them to excel in their role. The Auditorium, a host to many award-winning, life-changing network events. Take your ideas to the next level with the right people. The admissions office is every new learner's most visited space in the first month, so we invest in ensuring it is well equipped with the very best staff and resources you need to make your LBS journey seamless. Through the school's close links with industry, learners are provided with a practical learning experience that ensures lifelong values to their careers and employers. LBS has a rich portfolio of executive education programs targeted at various cadres of management executives. Instructional Design and Technology, IDT, is responsible for providing the LBS community with multimedia resources, course development, and redesign consultation, maintaining the institutional online learning platforms. ICT handles the design and alignment of technology roadmaps. Creation and adoption of technology standards, oversees the design and management of the computer network infrastructure, software development, and maintenance. At LBS, your security is paramount to us. Our campus lecture halls and other facilities are fully fitted with CCTV cameras. In addition to this, security personnel are present to make life and experience at LBS a hit-free one. Our cafeteria area hosts our staff and learners to an exquisite array of cuisine, both local and continental, with special preferences for vegetarians. The cafeteria is run by the school to ensure quality. Due to the power shortage in Nigeria, LBS depends on alternative sources of power to ensure the uninterrupted running of activities. We have 3 major diesel-powered generators used at different times depending on power demands. We have invested in a space that enables our scholars the opportunity to study and be rest assured that their kids are in a safe and conducive environment nearby. We take our students and staff well-being seriously at LBS. Our sick bay is equipped with the best of first aid equipment. LBS Document and Production Unit, also known as Document Room, is the one-stop place providing solutions for all document services: printing, photocopy, scanning, binding, ID cards, as well as sourcing of study materials for learners and faculty. The Gazebo is a fee-paying cafe, a great place that accords staff and learners the opportunity to enjoy the magnificently manicured greenery with a unique blend of lushness and serenity while eating. It is also a venue where faculty, staff and learners come to celebrate milestones such as birthdays and promotions. Our sports center serves as a recreational place where our scholars can unwind and bond with each other while staying fit. There is an annual Dean's Cup in which all the MBA programs participate. We boast of a very robust alumni network with more than 6,000 members. Our alumni network offices are designated to support our members worldwide with lifelong learning sessions and network opportunities.
Definitely hope that the dialogue today will drive more corporate action and support for Sustainable Development Goals, Africa Agenda 2063, and the overall improvement of quality of life and various other development indicators in our continent.
We recognize and appreciate the critical role business schools like the LBS are playing in stewarding a cadre of business leaders that are needed to drive business towards greater purpose for the good of society, the environment, as well as the economy.
It is also very interesting that this conversation is happening at this great time. I think the theme for this conference is also apt, and I'm hoping that, all of us seated here today will be able to come up with ideas that we need as the private sector to begin to look at how we can drive our own processes and systems.
I think on the one hand, the pace has been slow going, but on the other hand, there's a lot that has happened. If you look at from where we are coming, it's not a dismal story, because we have to look at these things as a continuum as opposed to a destination.
We have been able to invest and to promote activities and growth in some specific value chains. If the private sector can invest into the agricultural communities, then the farmers know that they have financial backing to be able to make investment.
Most of our SMEs are not well structured as businesses. Secondly, they are too small to draw the kind of capital available. And so one of the solutions that we've seen other models do is that they come together as a consortium to draw capital. And this is where we need our banks. So it's not only telling me to come and open an account. Bankers need to also understand these different business structures, especially those business models that come out of sustainability. The key takeaway from this conference has been that data is very important, and more importantly is power, energy. We really have the resources for production in terms of good land and all that. All we need to integrate in that is the practices which we call the climate smart practices, including data, caring for the environment, regenerative agriculture, and then powering that, of course, is the energy that we've talked about.
I think what we've seen here today is that there's need for more engagements with stakeholders so that we can all work towards building a sustainable and inclusive economy in Nigeria. So I think one of my key learning points is the fact that most of the key stakeholders we're targeting, especially the SMEs, do not have the knowledge or the awareness. So there is need for more engagement programs, capacity building, awareness creation programs, so that they can learn more, and so that they can be compliant to the internationally accepted disclosure and guidance from different institutions.
I love the ideas that actually have been expressed in this gathering today. People have been able to bring out a lot of ideas and make suggestions. I just believe that these ideas will be articulated and probably put into very good use. Use these ideas to support the ongoing interventions.
My name is Chris Ugbeche, Professor of Strategic Management and the current Dean of the Lagos Business School. Let me take you on a journey. As a member of the Management Board, I have the opportunity of understanding the workings of the school, the resources, the capabilities, and the strategic direction. As Director of the Sustainability Center, I also brought something new into the school, but also something that helped in linking the school to industry. My experience in the private sector has also prepared me to bring something special into the classroom whenever I teach. And we are not supposed to be purely academic, but to make the students fit into industry when they leave us. Given the peculiarities of the present business landscape,
hello and good morning, good afternoon, good evening from whichever part of the world you're joining us from. You're warmly welcome to the 10th edition of the International Sustainability Conference.
We're starting now, yes.
You're warmly welcome to the 10th edition of the International Sustainability Conference, put together, championed by the Lagos Business School and the Lagos Business School Sustainability Center. It's really a big deal to have been running this consistently for 10 years, for a decade. So ladies and gentlemen, please kindly put your hands together for the organizers, Lagos Business School and Lagos Business School Sustainability Center. Thank you very much. My name is Ambassador Otto Cannon, and I'll be your moderator today. The theme of today's conference is Building Africa's Future, Integrating Sustainability, Equity, and Innovation. What a powerful theme. What a powerful theme. Put together your pen and jotters, your notepads and note tabs, because it promises to be really insightful, engaging, and educating. And to make us feel properly welcome, we will call on our very own Dean of the Lagos Business School, Professor Chris Ugbeche, to give us a laudable welcome remark. Over to you, Professor.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all your participants from different parts of the world. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, business leaders, sustainability champions, and thought leaders in the globally interconnected space. It is my great honor to welcome you to the 2024 Lagos Business School International Sustainability Conference. Over the years, since its inauguration close to a decade ago, this conference has convened thought leaders and stakeholders across regions and sectors to deliberate on sustainability pathways that inspire thought and business action for a more sustainable future, especially in the economic context of Africa. This is why I am delighted to open this edition of the forum today. The theme of this year's conference, Building Africa's Future, Integrating Sustainability, Equity and Innovation, reflects our unequivocal stand and motivation as a knowledge institution to continue to collaborate with great minds and organizations to support the continent's economic future in balance and sustainable development. That our continent is a fair bride with potential has never been in doubt. However, the need for a progressive and resilient Africa and how to get there has continued to echo across regional hollowed chambers, boardrooms, and global convenience. This is without prejudice to our shared efforts in accelerating action towards ambitious, sustainable development goals and the Africa World Agenda 2063. The challenges we see in Africa today can be resolved when we take collective responsibility to reflect on the best approaches and take the right turns in our quest to realize aspirations to become our own powerhouse and not a mediocre pauper, always going cap in hand on the global stage. The attainments of entrepreneurs and business corporations on the continent shows every day that a sustainable Africa is possible and feasible if we do the right things for the long-term outcomes. So at this engagement, we will not only learn, but also showcase corporate and individual leaders of sustainability from Africa. You, the participants, help us take a multidimensional look at the sub-themes for discussion as you come from government, businesses, multilateral bodies, non-profits, and even academia. We value your participation over these 2 days, virtually joining us from over 70 countries across the globe. At the recent concluded UN COP29 in Baku, the African Development Bank President, Akinwumi Adesina, pinpointed a lot about the potentials in Africa, especially for the world's resilience to climate change risk. He mentioned Africa has some of the largest sources of natural capital in the world, including over 40% of the world's clean energy potential, 65% of the world's uncultivated arable land, 25% of global biodiversity, and 20% of the world's tropical rainforest area. Africa is also endowed with abundant renewable energy and almost unlimited potential of solar capacity. Put at 10 terawatts, hydro capacity put at 350 gigawatts, and wind capacity put at 110 gigawatts. And of course, geothermal energy sources put at 15 gigawatts, all of which are the backbone of a less carbon-intensive and more sustainable energy system. At the Lagos Business School International Sustainability Conference today and tomorrow, we will discuss, showcase, and remind ourselves of the existing and growing best practices, not just from abroad, but on the African continent as well. This includes providing a platform for all of us to learn about the vibrant and impactful private sector, Africa's not-so-secret powerhouse, and how they are scaling solutions and driving inclusive, equitable, and innovative progress to sustainable development across the continent. I am confident this conference will be inspiring, educative, and empowering, and we look forward to the actionable and valuable and value-creating thought leadership that emerged from this forum. I want to say a big thank you to our partners, the Global Reporting Initiative, GRI, Shared Value Africa, Nestle Nigeria PLC, and PricewaterhouseCoopers Nigeria. I am grateful to all our speakers and panelists and participating organizations for taking time out of your busy schedule to be part of this important discussion, and to the leadership team and affiliates of the Lagos Business School Sustainability Center for putting this together and hosting us. Ladies and gentlemen, I encourage you to stay logged in and participate fully using the virtual platforms for chats, comments, networking, and questions. The 2024 International Sustainability Conference is officially open, and I wish you all an impactful learning experience and fruitful deliberation. Thank you, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you very much, Professor, and a warm round of applause to Professor Chris Ogbueche. He said a sustainable Africa is possible. That's a resounding word that I think will keep resonating in our minds. And the Lagos Business School and the Lagos Business School Sustainability Center don't just believe that a sustainable Africa is possible, but they've been striving in several ways to see that it comes to fruition. And that goes to, reiterate and commend them for their effort in consistently hosting this for 10 years. You'd agree with me that 10 years ago, sustainability wasn't a big deal, but because of their impact and their effort, it's now the metrics for measuring success in the corporate world. A warm round of applause again to Professor and to the Lagos Business School. At this juncture, we'll call on the Chief Standard Officer of Global Reporting Initiative, GRI, to give us his special remarks and special greetings in person of Bastian Bock. I think he has a good role message that has been recorded.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, it is a privilege to address you today as we gather for yet another milestone event led by Lagos Business School Sustainability Center. On behalf of the Global Reporting Initiative, I extend my warmest greetings and heartfelt appreciation to Lagos Business School for your unwavering commitment to advancing sustainability across Africa. Through your innovative capacity building programs, dynamic knowledge exchange forums, and cutting-edge research, you continue to illuminate pathways for progress and inspire positive transformation on the continent. GI values its partnership with the LBS as a cornerstone of our shared mission. Together, we have championed critical initiatives that have elevated sustainability discourse and action. The International Sustainability Conference, now firmly established as a flagship event, exemplifies our joint commitment to thought leadership in convening sustainability champions, professionals, and business leaders. Our collaboration on the GI's 13 agriculture, aquaculture, and fishing sector standards launched last year and subsequent forums have demonstrated the power of partnership in delivering frameworks that resonate with Africa's unique context and opportunity. Similarly, the courses developed by the School on Sustainability Reporting and Impact Measurement underscore our shared belief in equipping individuals and organizations with the tools and knowledge they need to embed sustainability in their core strategies. This year's theme, Building Africa integrating sustainability, equity, and innovation across sectors, business, public, non-profit, and academia alike, to carve sustainability pathways that lead to a continent that is not only prosperous, but also equitable, resilient, and peaceful. GI has been promoting public reporting on the impacts on economy, environment, and people as a means to support the much-needed dialogue on sustainable development trajectories for communities, countries, and regions. Pathways to an equitable, resilient, and peaceful future need to be built with a clear understanding and indeed visibility of the externalities of economic activity on others. Inducing transparency on these matters will help to strengthen accountability, prospects, and resilience of individual entities and whole sectors. We see momentum building globally around mainstreaming transparency on impacts as a key expectation for businesses to operate. Access to capital markets and value chains will depend increasingly on comprehensive information provision on sustainability matters. As we navigate the complexities of our time, the work of the LBS Sustainability Center continues to be an indispensable force in shaping sustainable and inclusive future in Africa. On behalf of GI, I wish you continued success in your Pan-African endeavors, particularly in hosting the International Sustainability Conference today. I trust that the conversation here will spark actionable insights that resonate with the global and regional business ecosystems, fostering a culture of accountability and sustainability for generations to come. Thank you, and may this conference deliver the impact we all envision. Thank you again, and have a good day.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And we trust and believe that the conference will deliver its goals and objectives. Thank you very much. Our next speaker will be the President and CEO of Africa Finance Corporation. But before that, we will watch a video for 5 minutes. So while the video is playing, we trust that the President and CEO of Africa Finance Corporation, Samaila Zubairu, would put together her special keynote address.
Guys, we are almost graduating. What does the future hold for us African youth?
After graduating from college, is securing a job certain?
I want to further my education. Why shouldn't I leave this country to seek other opportunities?
As an aspiring fashion designer who would like to trade in textile all over Africa, how do I get funding for my business?
Trade? Are we even sure of economic stability? As for me, I just want to expand our family farm and set up a food processing company. But how can I easily transport and sell my goods to other African countries?
Have you not heard of Agenda 2063?
What is Agenda 2063?
Agenda 2063 is the master plan for transforming Africa into a global powerhouse of the future by the year 2063. And ensuring that Africa's development is driven by investments that are sustainable and benefits all people, and that development activities will promote unity, self-determination, freedom, progress, and collective prosperity, pursued under the ideals of Pan-Africanism and the vision of Africa's Renaissance. Do you know Agenda 2063 aims to increase investment in key infrastructure, improved agricultural practices, and better management of our natural resources, as well as access to quality health and education to enable Africans to unlock their full potential? And with a well-educated society and empowered people, our communities will thrive as Africans actively participate in decision-making to promote good governance, democracy, respect for human rights, and the right to live in stable and peaceful societies. And a peaceful and secure Africa will provide the right environment we desire for growth and development, productive employment, and decent work for all. We can build more world-class infrastructure, sustain industrialization, and foster innovation as we invest in the blue ocean economy, agriculture, advanced technology, transportation, health, renewable energy, commerce and finance, and even outer space technology, translating into a better standard and quality of living for all African people. The Agenda 2063 promotes a united Africa with a strong cultural identity, common heritage, values and ethics. Agenda 2063 will enable Africa to position itself as a strong, united, resilient and influential global player.
Wow, that is the Africa I want.
That is the Africa I want.
That is the Africa I want.
That is the Africa I want. That is the Africa I want.
This is the Africa we want.
Let us unite to build the Africa we want. Visit www.au.int to learn more about Agenda 2063.
Thank you very much to our media and technical team. That is indeed the Africa I want, indeed the Africa we all want. There was no better time to play that video because just like the theme of this event, that video also reflects the transformative vision of Africa. So without further ado, and with a warm round of applause, let's welcome the CEO of Africa Finance Corporation, Samaila Zubairu, to do justice to the theme of this event. You have the stage, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for having me here today. Good morning, distinguished guests, faculty, students of the Lagos Business School, esteemed colleagues and friends. It is a profound honor to address you all today. The Lagos Business School is an institution that holds a special place in my heart. Over 30 years ago, I had the privilege of attending several executive and leadership development programs here. The lessons I learned have profoundly shaped my leadership journey and remain with me till this day. When I later became part of a team supporting the evolution and growth of Dangote Industries, the lessons I learned from Lagos Business School served as guiding principles and have been a constant in my many endeavors till to date. Particularly, our lessons on industry analysis, cost leadership, as well as economies of scale in driving growth have been strong lessons that have stayed and shaped my trajectory as a leader. This year's conference theme, Building Africa's Future, Integrating Sustainability, Equity and Innovation, could not be more timely. It challenges us to confront the realities of Africa's development while envisioning a future defined by resilience, prosperity, and sustainability. It is also timely because the African continent found itself at a time. It's also timely because the African continent finds itself at an unprecedented juncture. For the first time, as far as I can remember, solving Africa's challenges and solving the world's challenges have become intertwined. They are one and the same thing. What do I mean by this? And I'll give you context. So for the past several years, from the time of COVID till today, we've been trying to solve a myriad of issues and challenges by managing demand without focusing on supply, bearing in mind that the challenges we face today is one of supply. We clearly need more energy. We clearly need more resources for the energy transition. We clearly need to diversify supply chains. We clearly need to think differently about globalization and several other factors. And Africa is at the heart of these solutions. And I'll give you some examples. When we look at the energy transition today, it will require a significant amount of more minerals and metals. We know that the World Bank has given us estimates that we need probably about 5 times more minerals and metals for the energy transition. And the reason why that is so is because we know that a typical wind turbine requires up to 11 times more minerals and metals than a gas turbine. We know that an electric vehicle car requires up to 6 times more minerals and metals than a typical internal combustion engine car. We know that, for example, if you're looking at particular resources, say, for example, copper, you need twice the amount of copper in an EV car than an internal combustion engine car. So all of this means the need for a lot more resources. And we have to be looking at how to process these resources differently. It can't be that we're trying to use the same intensive energy systems that are required, for a new world where we want less energy intensity. And Africa has, I would say, some of the best solar sources. In fact, the International Energy Association tells us that Africa has 60% of the best solar potential. Professor Egbeche in his remarks mentioned that we have over 10,000 gigawatts of solar. That's 10 terawatts. It is true. And we have less than 1% built. That is also very true because we are amongst the players in 10% of that 1% that has been built. So we know the scale and we know the challenge. And we know this because in trying to grow that platform, we see that there's significant constraint on supply. So the way we should be thinking about, growth, sustainability, and development going forward is how can we increase supply? And that is where Africa plays a key part of that equation. So when we say that Africa's challenge and the world's challenge are now intertwined, that is what we mean. We mean that when we focus on creating more supply, when you focus on creating more growth, we will see how Africa is integral to that growth. So the world cannot achieve net zero targets without Africa. And I've said this several times. If you consider the fact that we have about 40% of the minerals and metals that are required for that energy transition, and the fact that we have all the renewable energy sources that we have on the continent, you can see why Africa is central to the energy transition. And it's the reason why we must change our lens or the prism from which we view Africa. Africa is an investment destination, and Africa is the growth engine that the world needs to power the green revolution and the green growth that we all seek. We also have a lot of talent here on the continent. We have a lot of people that can power this growth. We have the energy systems to power the growth. And we also have a market readily here in Africa that can demonstrate that growth. So we have over 600 million people without access to electricity. And connecting them is a market opportunity that will work for Africa and work for the rest of the world and all those that participate in this growth. We have up to 900 million people without access to clean cooking. All of these are opportunities for growth that Africa represents. Similarly, Africa's agricultural systems can be a cornerstone of global food security. With 60% of the world's uncultivated arable land, Africa has the potential to feed not only itself, but the world. Yet the continent is also disproportionately affected by climate change, with droughts, floods, and erratic weather patterns threatening livelihoods and ecosystems. Sustainability in Africa is therefore a global imperative. Let me briefly turn to what I see as Africa's key challenges. So, unemployment, poverty, inequality, climate risks, and weak institutions are the key challenges that we must face and confront for growth to happen on our continent. Africa is blessed with immense potential, vast natural resources, a dynamic and youthful population, and an emerging innovation ecosystem. Yet we face undeniable challenges that we must overcome to realize sustainable development. Unemployment, particularly among the youth, remains a pressing issue, with millions of Africans unable to find meaningful work. Persistent poverty and inequality are an obstacle to African prosperity and threaten our collective progress. Climate change and its impact compound these challenges, endangering lives, livelihoods, and threatening to destroy what little economic development exists. Moreover, weak institutions and governance structures constrain our ability to effectively mobilize resources, implement policies, and drive development. If we were to chart a sustainable path forward, addressing these systemic issues must be the priority. So how can we make a difference? How can we take greater ownership of Africa's development, as we must? As we confront the many challenges, we must recognize a fundamental truth. Sustainable development will not come from external actors. Africans must take ownership of our development, and we must intentionally fund the development of our continent. In essence, we must take ownership of our destiny, as we've always said we will. This time around, we need to be more pragmatic, we need to be practical, and we need to do things to demonstrate that we have a strategy for growth that the world can help us scale. I always say it's easier to have a discussion around how to scale what is working than to have a conversation about what we can do together. Too often, we have been cast as victims of global systems and circumstances. It is time to move beyond this narrative. We must lead with confidence, harnessing our abundant resources and creativity to drive our development. This required a mindset shift from dependence on aid and charity to building self-reliance and resilience. I always say to my team and to my partners, with whomever we work, that whatever has happened in the past is the past. What we have is here and now. And what is important is what we can do now to make a difference. And we must seize the moment of building a brighter, better future for Africa. Intentional leadership is key, and African governments, businesses, and institutions must unite in crafting policies and strategies that prioritize the continent's long-term interests, ensuring that growth is inclusive and environmentally sustainable. Funding Africa's development by capturing and retaining more value has to be an intentional strategy that all African leaders and institutions must adapt, and I must say, make the mantra for development going forward. To realize our potential, we must rethink how we fund our development. Most importantly, we must move away from our reliance on external funding and prescriptions, which place a lot more emphasis on stability as opposed to growth. Africa is a country that needs to grow. We cannot stabilize what is failing. We need to grow and build what is sustainable. We often fail to address the continent's unique opportunities and challenges. Instead, Africa must transition to a model where it takes full ownership of its growth and finances from within the continent. And I'll explain what I mean by this. So most times when we are talking about our challenges, we're always looking to experts from outside the continent who have a different approach and who are not looking at our unique circumstance. I remember my first meeting at the World Economic Forum in Davos. And there was a conversation around energy transition. And it was this, talking about all kinds of ideas. And I just said, can we just take a minute and reflect on what's actually happening right now in ground? And I realized that, I was the only African in the room. And I said to them, I'm really surprised at how we can, be discussing energy transition without any consideration for 1.2 billion people who have no access to energy systems. Energy transition for Africans is moving from firewood and charcoal to anything that is more clean and more sustainable. It is about how can we keep the trees in the ground instead of bringing them down to feed ourselves? Our energy access is one of the lowest in the world. And we're talking about energy transition without consideration for the fact that there is going to be significant growth in this continent. We're going to have up to 2 billion people that will need energy systems. We can't have a conversation without consideration for what access means first before we talk about transition. So if our recipe for growth is talking to people that don't have our context, then we know that we can never grow. If our recipe for stabilization is to talk to people that don't understand our context, then we know that there's nothing that will stabilize. So again, we must change our mindset. We must look internally at what is our reality and how can we move from where we are today to the future that we deserve. This shift is essential to ensure sustainable development and the retention of value on the continent. Achieving this vision will require a fundamental change in approach centered on 3 key strategies. First, we must intentionally capitalize our banks and development finance institutions. We have to strengthen African multilateral development banks, African financial institutions, and look at how to intentionally capitalize this. And I'll give you an example of what this means. So earlier in my life, I used to be the treasurer for Dangote Group. I also used to be the CFO for Dangote Cement eventually. And when I was the treasurer for Dangote Group, we were working on a project to build the Obajana cement factory. At that time, it was going to be the largest cement factory in Africa. It was also going to be the largest industrial undertaking by an African institution. So most development that happens in Africa is led by non-Africans, apart from in South Africa. So this was going to be the first time that an African institution was driving growth. This was, I would say 20 years ago when we were doing this. And to raise, I think it was $480 million. It took us 2 years to raise that amount of money. At that time, Nigeria had no credit rating. We were heavily indebted to the Paris and London clubs. So, we're almost a pariah internationally. And our banks, people will not remember this, the largest, any bank, their maximum single obligor limit then was something like, I think 5.7 billion naira. And I think one of them was 6 billion naira. So it was difficult to raise money at that point in time. But anyway, we managed to raise the money. It was a $1 billion project. We raised 60% locally, and we raised about 40% of the funds. The project was $1 billion. It was 60% equity and about 40% debt. Of the debt, 20% of the debt was from the local banks and 80% was from international banks. So what happened was, once the cement plant was built, we were able to move from importing cement to producing cement and selling locally. So the margins improved significantly from about 20% to over 70%. Why? Because at that time, Nigeria was still importing a lot of cement, and the price in the market was the price of imported cement. So the fact that we were producing locally meant we could capture and retain more value locally. So the next phase of growth was to build cement plants, expand capacity in Nigeria and outside Nigeria, in Senegal, and I think in Zambia. Those were the initial destinations for growth. And it was about $1.9 billion of CapEx that was required at that point in time. But because we had started producing locally, we're already able to generate about $450 million from our own internal resources. We're also able to mobilize about $1.1 billion, from Nigerian financial institutions, from Nigerian banks. So what we spent 2 years doing, we're able to do over 2 months without having to travel anywhere. So that demonstrates to you how, when you focus on value capture and value retention internally, you have a lot more equity that you can bring to the table. And if you have banks that are well capitalized, they can support your growth. So Nigeria is one of the few jurisdictions in Africa where you can raise significant amounts of funds from within the continent. And that is something that was built here in Nigeria. And I advocate as a recipe for other African institutions. Now, of course, things have changed. And Nigerian banks are currently going through a round of further capitalization, which I think should be supported. I think we should all support African financial institutions because their growth and development is what will fund our development. And we must also go beyond just the banks. We must be looking at how to credit enhance for pension funds and insurance companies to also invest in infrastructure and industrialization. And here again, we have an initiative that we've powered or partnered with the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority and PIDG out of the United Kingdom, whereby we're providing credit guarantees for pension funds and insurance companies to invest in infrastructure. Again, this is how we can intentionally fund our development. And initiatives like this need to be replicated at scale across Africa so that we can find a lot more resources from within to fund our development. More importantly, we also need to be looking at how we are saving our foreign reserves. There is no need to take all the money outside the continent. We must find ways to keep the money within the continent so that it can create value for us within the continent. Another approach that we must adopt is blended finance. We must find ways for us to create structures that build on partnership and collaboration with external parties. We've mentioned severally, and we've published a paper actually, and I encourage you all to read it, Africa's Pragmatic Path to Net Zero, where we've argued that the focus cannot be for Africa to reduce emissions that we don't have. However, because of our significant mineral resources and our abundant renewable resources, which I mentioned and which Professor Gichu also mentioned in his opening remarks, we are better off working with the world to reduce energy emissions. And we do that by ensuring that we can create and retain more value within the continent. And I'll give an example. We are working with a copper mine in DRC. We've helped them increase capacity, and we're helping them build systems to transform copper ores to copper concentrates. And we're building a copper smelter, which will be one of the world's largest copper smelters. In fact, it will be the third largest copper smelter in the world, and clearly the largest on the continent. This copper smelter is going to be powered by hydro energy from one of the dams that we've rehabilitated to provide energy to this system. And we would have industrial decarbonization already happening here in Africa. So again, with African funding, African resources, we're able to show what is possible and demonstrate a path that can be scaled. Similarly, we have built an infrastructure climate resilient fund, bearing in mind that most of Africa's infrastructure is yet to be built. And as we think of building infrastructure, we need to make it climate proof. We need to incorporate climate risk in Africa's future infrastructure build. So we've built the Infrastructure Climate Resilient Fund, again, in partnership with the Green Climate Fund that has given us up to $240 million in funding support. And we have mobilized funding from ourselves, African institutions, Nigerian pension funds to fund this. Again, another example of blended finance to be used to build Africa's infrastructure that is sustainable and resilient to the adverse impacts of climate change. Another important thing that we have to look at is how can we unlock Africa's informal sector and savings. So we all know that the informal sector is so much larger than the formal sector in Africa. And we have to be thinking deliberately about how to formalize that. There again, our innovation in the digital space, again, mobile money is an innovation from Africa that has caught up in the rest of the world. Most of the payment system and fintech systems are from Africa. Another innovation that we can scale for the benefit of Africa. More importantly, this innovation can also be used to formalize most of Africa's informal sector. And we must be intentional about how we demonstrate that we truly have a large, compelling market. And we have to do that ourselves. We have to be the ones that are at the heart of digitizing Africa's informal sector and capturing the savings that are within that for our growth and development. Let me say a little about what AFC is doing in the area of sustainable development. Over the years, we at the Africa Finance Corporation have remained unwavering in our commitment to drive Africa's sustainable development. Through strategic investments, we are focused on aligning with the continent's priorities. So we align with the African Union's Development Agenda 2060, which we just watched a video on. And we've aligned with several other priorities. Again, like I mentioned, our paper on Africa's pragmatic path to net zero, which we see has been adopted in the main by a lot of African countries. We've published a paper on unlocking Africa's and the world's most valuable carbon sinks. We've published a paper on Africa's state of infrastructure, all of which I encourage you to read to see how we're aligning our development with Africa's priorities. So we're not just focused on protecting our environment, but we're also creating meaningful jobs and driving the structural transformation that Africa needs to drive. This mission is at the heart of everything we do, and it reflects our belief in a future where sustainability and prosperity go hand in hand. For example, Africa Finance Corporation has played a key role in developing renewable energy projects across the continent. Our renewable energy platform today is the largest in Africa. Along with our partners, we have operational capacity of 1.2 gigawatts, which includes solar, wind, assets in South Africa, in Egypt, in Senegal, in Cape Verde, in Djibouti, with hydro dams under construction in Cote d'Ivoire, and of course, our support for various power initiatives across in Nigeria and across the continent. We also have, like I mentioned, a huge pipeline of renewable assets, over 10 gigawatts. And in sourcing those the equipment to roll out the pipeline, we see the challenge about the limitation of supply and why there must be a focus on how to grow and create more supply in the world going forward. Most recently in Djibouti, we supported the country's aspiration to be powered entirely by green energy. We helped build a 60-megawatt wind farm that's providing 50% of the energy requirements of the country, reducing reliance on imported electricity and fossil fuels from outside the country. And we are on the path and have a pipeline to help them achieve 100% renewable energy capacity by 2025. Other landmark renewable energy projects include the Kabolika wind farm that we built in Cape Verde and other public-private partnerships projects that we have across the continent. More importantly, we are currently working on a very important project out of Morocco, which is a 10.5 gigawatt solar, wind, and battery storage plant that will provide 8% of the energy requirements of the United Kingdom. Most people always ask me, why are we working on a project in Africa that will export energy to the United Kingdom, when Africans have no access to electricity? And I said to them that this project will provide access to electricity, additional access to both Africa and the United Kingdom. Again, we've always argued that the investments that are required for the energy transition must happen in the global south or in developing countries that still have to grow their energy systems. And for me, this is a demonstration of how Africa can work for itself and the rest of the world. We've also argued that instead of looking at increased additional LNG capacity or natural gas capacity for Europe and Asia, we should be thinking about how to repurpose those industries that are going to require those energy systems in Africa. So instead of trying to increase capacity in Europe and in Asia, build capacity in Africa to utilize Africa's natural gas. And then you can do further processing in Asia or Europe. One of the important projects we're working on now is the Lobito Corridor, where we are acting as lead developers, for the US PGII or G7 PGII, European Commission Program for Global Infrastructure and Investment. The plan is to rehabilitate a rail line from DRC to Angola and to build a greenfield line from northwest Zambia in Chingola to Luakano in Angola. Again, this promises to diversify the supply chain for minerals. It would unlock the battery minerals value chain, which I mentioned through the work we're doing on the copper mine. But there's a whole battery minerals value chain that's going to be opened up. And just for context, I think the electric vehicle industry today is a market of $7 trillion. And this would grow to over $40 trillion by 2050. I think, if I remember correctly, $47 trillion. Now, Africa currently exports a lot of minerals.
Sorry to interrupt, sir. Please, I respectfully ask that you just round up so we stay on time. Thank you very much.
So this is going to be about $47 trillion. Africa is exporting minerals and metals now for about, I would say, $12 billion. But if we can move to capture and retain more value, we can go up to $240 billion. This is the kind of initiative that I think is important that as Africans, we must focus on. So besides renewable energy, AFC has also invested in infrastructure that facilitates industrialization and trade by focusing on industrial parks. Most notably, we have an initiative we call Arise Integrated Industrial Parks, which has built carbon neutral industrial zones that have focused on job creation across the continent. Our industrial park in Gabon has been adjudged the first carbon neutral industrial park on the continent. Our industrial park in Benin and Togo are producing and transforming cotton to t-shirts, again, providing job opportunities and growth on the continent. This serve as benchmark of sustainable industrialization and showcase how strategic infrastructure can drive economic growth while prioritizing environmental stewardship. Our commitment also extends beyond Africa's resilience to climate change.
Thank you very much.
Let me try and wrap up quickly, because I've said a lot of the things. So again, as I conclude, I'd like to emphasize that Africa's future is in our hands. The choices we make today will determine whether we leave a legacy of resilience and prosperity or squander the opportunities before us. Let us take ownership of our development, intentionally funding our progress by leveraging our resources, empowering our people, and fostering innovation. Let us embrace sustainability and equity as guiding principles, ensuring that growth is inclusive and enduring. Finally, let us lead with the boldness and vision that Africa demands, setting an example not only for our continent, but for the world. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to further engagements over the course of the program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and a warm round of applause to the distinguished President and CEO Africa Finance Corporation, Samaila Zubairu. That's indeed a crash course right there. You didn't just highlight the challenges we face in Africa, but you emphasized the untapped potentials, presenting innovative solutions and actionable strategies. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. At this juncture, we're running behind time, so we'll just try to move on quickly. And to every other speaker, please try to stay on the allotted time. We'll delve right into a panel discussion, a very interesting one. Innovative strategies for sustainable and resilient food systems in Africa. And we have some of the finest speakers. Lagos Business School and Lagos Business School Sustainability Center is known for this, for selecting the best every year. And we have some of them right here. So permit me to introduce the speakers and then hand over to the moderator. Our first speaker, in no particular order, is Ade Adefeko, Director of Corporate and Regulatory Affairs, Olam Agri. Our next speaker, Victoria Uwadoka, Corporate Communications, Public Affairs, and Sustainability Lead, Nestle Nigeria. The next speaker, Femi Aiki, CEO, Foot Lockers. The next speaker, Jeroen Elfers, former Global Dairy Director, Friesland Campina, and GM Desired State Consulting. And then our moderator, who is the Sustainability Manager of Nestle Nigeria, is none other than Chinwe Obi. A warm round of applause to Chinwe as she takes over and moderates the panel session.
Thank you so much, Canon. Please confirm you can see me from your end.
Yes, can.
Excellent. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this highly anticipated session on the topic, innovative strategies for sustainable and resilient food systems in Africa. As already introduced, I am Chinwe Obi. I will moderate the session, and I must say it is an honor to guide what promises to be an enlightening and solution-driven conversation. As we gather today from across the globe, we are united by a shared commitment, which is addressing one of the world's most critical challenges of our time, building food systems that would not only be sustainable, but that would be resilient in the face of social, economic, and environmental uncertainties. I believe the stakes couldn't really be higher. Recent Food and Agriculture Organization report emphasizes the fact that global hunger is not on track to meet the SDGs targets by 2030. We have several challenges, and I'm sure everyone on the call today can relate, including rising food prices, climate change, conflict. And what even makes this worse is with a population that's projected to surpass 2.5 billion by 2050, you will agree with me that the need to have innovative strategies that would help us achieve food security as a continent cannot be overemphasized and is really crucial at this time. And although we have several challenges, there are also several opportunities for us as a continent. And this is what our hand-picked panelists will be doing today, deep diving into the opportunities that exist for us as a continent and kind of charting a path towards a better food systems for us. Our panelists have already been mentioned and introduced, but I would really like to do a deeper dive so that we have full understanding of the quality of the caliber of people that has been handpicked for this deliberation today. Their expertise really spans policy, innovation, agri-technology, communication, sustainability, commerce, and beyond. And we will be enjoying their wealth of knowledge and experience as we go on to the session today. I will want to speak more on our first speaker, Victoria, who, as has been introduced, is the lead corporate affairs, corporate communications, public affairs, and sustainability at Nestle Nigeria. But also, Victoria is responsible for coordinating Nestle's focus on ensuring sustainable value chain from farm to fork, while managing the company's creating shared value initiatives and reaching over 50,000 individuals and families across Nigeria on an annual basis. I mean, you will agree with me that creating shared value is a central topic and really linked to the conversations that we'll be having today. Victoria has been a corporate communication professional for over 20 years. Her career spans various industries. Victoria has been in ICT, she has been in beauty, she has been in entertainment, and the likes of it. And so, Victoria, today we look forward to your insights on balancing policy and grassroots actions to advance food security. It's a pleasure to have you, Victoria. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Ms. Chi. Thank you. Hi, everyone.
Excellent. Ade Adefeko as well wears several hats. He is a commercial diplomat, visionary leader, and a global executive. He is the director at the Nigerian-Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He's a member of the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform Committee. He's also chairman of Industrial Group Lagos Chambers of Commerce and Industry. He's also chairman Publicity Group Nigerian Association of Chambers of Commerce and Industry, Mines and Agriculture, NASIMA, and is equally the honorary consul of Botswana in Lagos. Several things to say about Ade here. But Ade, I'd say it's nice to have you here, and your perspective would be invaluable in exploring how financial access can drive sustainability in agriculture. Thank you for joining us. Ade, can you hear me? Are you on the call, please?
Ade is not on the call.
Okay. I will go on to...
It's muted.
Oh, he is muted. Okay. Ade, can you hear me? If you can hear me, you're muted, and maybe just unmute your mic. All right. While we wait for Ade to respond, I will go on to do a deeper dive, a deeper introduction to Jeroen Elfas, who is the third panelist who will be on this session today. He's a professional in the dairy and agribusiness sector, known for his expertise in agriculture, supply chain management, dairy development, with an extensive experience in strategic leadership. Jeroen has held senior roles in companies including Friesland Campina, where he focused on new product development, corporate affairs, global dairy development, and sustainability initiatives. Today, he is building a personal brand, the Desired State Consulting. And Elfas, I would say that we will be very privileged to learn from you. You have been in corporate for several years, and now you're building a global brand. It's going to be great hearing from you as you bring the best of both worlds really into the conversation today. So welcome, and it's a pleasure to have you as one of our panelists today.
Thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to the panel discussion. Thank you. Excellent.
Thank you so much. Our final panelist today is Olufemi Aiki. Olufemi Aiki is the CEO and founder of Food Locker Africa, which is an agricultural technology and food technology startup, and it uses precision and regenerative agriculture to tackle food insecurity in Nigeria. Femi has worked with several organizations, Amazon, Hitachi Rail, Infosys, several organizations really, and holds an MBA from the ESET Business School. He also has a master's in international business engineering and a master's as well from the Imperial College, United Kingdom. Femi, it's a pleasure to have you here. Femi is a first-class graduate of the renowned Obafemi Awolowo University. I am particularly looking forward to learning about precision agriculture, Femi. It's so good to have you on this session.
Thank you very much. It's so good to be here. I really appreciate the invitation.
Excellent. Okay, so to start up this conversation, I would want for us to really have at least 1 minute of our panelists today sharing with us something like an opening statement, what you think where you think our minds should be at, what should be the expectations from everyone. What are your thoughts as we go into this conversation? So I will start with Ade, if Ade is on the call now. Ade, if you can confirm to me that you're on the call now. Otherwise, we can go right on to have Jeroen 1 minute statement opening how you feel we should be positioned as we go into the conversation today. And then we can have Victoria and Femi.
Yes, sure. Thank you for this and giving me the floor. Let me start is that a lot has been said already at the start of this conference in relation to the Burning Platform. And I think that as human mankind, we all agree that a lot has happened since Al Gore in 2006 started with his inconvenient truth. And a lot of people thought and looked at it, but we didn't really took it in. And look where we are today. It's probably the most written topic about in every news item or newspaper. Also, a lot has been said today about Africa. But what is also very interesting, in my view, is that it's good to look at other continents as well. If you look what is happening in South America, if you look what is happening in South Asia, take, for example, Brazil, which has become a true world power in food production, feed production as well. But also within Africa, there are an extremely amount of good examples, not necessarily only in sustainability. But what I found very exciting is that how fast Africa went in the adoption of mobile telephones, and basically skipping the landlines era and go straight into mobile phones. So you see that a lot is possible as long as there's good collaboration. And that's, you can see that on my background, is that I really believe in the golden triangle. So strong collaboration between the public sector, the private sector, and science. So knowledge centers, that's one. But also, yes, to think big. We heard about big numbers today already. But at the end of the day, it all starts with single people, single farmers, smallholders. And just to finish off with my 1 minute is that I just want to talk about Mr. Moyosoro, which is a farmer in Oyo State who started 10 years ago with 1 cow and half an acre of land. And with some help, just a few thousands, I think it was $3,000 of grants. Today, he has 30 acres, he has 30 lactating cows, he has 3 families living off this farm. Actually, he has training centers, he's a master farm. That means that he supports other farmers in the environment. So he is now giving his knowledge to others. And they are cooking on a biodigester. So on gas coming from manure. So it's just a single farmer that started with 1 white Fulani cow. And yes, that takes patience. But I think that that is a good example. And that is what you want 100,000 times like that. So it's not only about the big numbers, but actually everything that is big today started small once, even we as humans.
Absolutely.
And I think that that is something very good to look at. And the last thing to mention is that pre-competitiveness. We only have one world that we basically borrow from our kids. And that means that we should see sustainability as a pre-competitive topic. So I'm very happy actually that, as an example, within Nigeria, 3 dairy giants, in this case Danone, Ala, and Friesland Tapina Wamco, started a collaboration of the willing and trying to gather as many actors as possible together to build a more sustainable dairy sector, in this case in Nigeria. So I see those as very good examples that can work well in many countries. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Jeroen. That is really inspiring story there. And it just goes to show how investing in one smallholder farmer, like in this case, how much impact and ripple effects that could create for our food systems. Thank you so much for sharing. We will go on now to Victoria in 1 minute, how you would want us to be positioned, yes, as we move in.
Thank you very much, Chinwe. And I won't start without thanking LBS for the opportunity to be on this panel to talk about this really critical subject of the strategies for sustainable and resilient food systems in Africa. For me, 2 key words: sustainable and then resilient. I think these are critical in view of the way our population across Africa is rapidly growing. And, that if you look at that as a paradox with the situation that we have right now, rapidly increasing urbanization, and then a significant decline in food production. That's a paradox that is like a nightmare that we have to face. And I like what Horen said. I hope I got that right. Horen, I think I tried to get that right. Talking about, that farmer, that one farmer, that it seems to be just a little thing, but it makes a lot of difference. I think that we can begin to change the story one community at a time by empowering the farmers to make differences one community at a time. But then, if you look at that, this topic, is a hot topic, really. It's the subject of many conversations, and it underscores the urgency to go from talking to doing right now. And we need to develop at scale. We need to really develop at scale innovative strategies for sustainable and resilient food systems. And it doesn't come from too much, I think. It comes from, just what we're talking about, empowering one community at a time, empowering local communities. And we can begin to share examples of some of the progress that we've made at Nestle, in really growing our local sourcing, developing one value chain at a time. If we look at what we did with sorghum in the Sahel, that today we're sourcing 100% of our sorghum from Nigeria, right? And then we're empowering those farmers, we're improving their livelihoods. We see the percentage increases day over day, year after year. We've brought the rejection rate from 30-something% right down to 4%. And that's by efforts made one farmer at a time, one community, one cooperative at a time. So I look forward to this conversation, producing workable solutions that we can begin to implement now in Africa to begin to move forward. If we need to make progress economically, we need to make progress in feeding our people, in accommodating our people, in ensuring the safety of our people, because I think that they're all interwoven. So once again, really looking forward to the conversation, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Victoria. Thank you for that insight. Kind of puts us in the right frame as we move on into the deliberations today. Okay, Femi, your 1 minute starts now.
Thank you so much. I think solid foundations have already been laid, so I'll just rely on the foundations already laid. And I'm super excited that Madam Victoria talked about sorghum. So basically the output of any kind of agricultural production essentially could be the yield, but it could also be the impact on the climate. So you're talking about net impact, the full range of what you get after your production activities. But this outputs, they are basically a function of the inputs, so the things you put in. So for example, you have the seed or the primary input. It could be livestock, it could be a day-old chick, it could be a simple calf. And then the potential of that input. And then you have other inputs that you need to use. So for example, you could use fertilizer, agrochemicals, etc. And then you can also have agronomic practices, technology, including the mechanization, the data, the people who are significantly important in that production process, the knowledge or the science that is required for you to drive that production, the location where you're actually driving that production. Is it going to be a dry land? Is it a wetland? Is it a place that is prone to drought or a place that is prone to flooding? And then you have the soil, the environmental conditions. You have the climatic conditions, you have the weather patterns. And then you have your harvesting technology and then the post-harvesting processes. So you can see I've reeled out a large number of inputs, but we're selecting just one in this conversation, and that is climate. My thesis is actually that climate is both an input, but also an output of our production processes. And climate should actually influence the choices we make on all other input variables. As soon as you look at what I've pictured out, it looks like a parametric equation where you can then start running your machine learning models to actually find what are the scenarios through which you can prepare ahead for certain situations of climate change that can actually affect your production processes. And I think we'll talk about that. For example, my position is that there are certain places in Nigeria that have no business to do with planting maize or planting soybeans. Because you have the likes of sorghum that are more drought resilient. You have the likes of kenaf that potentially would be more flooding resilient. In my opinion, sustainability cannot be an extra cost. Africa cannot afford to pay more for sustainability, which means our objective has to be that this has to be a moment for us to leapfrog and gain competitive advantage because of sustainability requirements. I expect that we should be able to get predictable results by leveraging the science, the data, and the climate, which means climate for us is an advantage. It should not be a limitation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Femi. That was very, very insightful. And I saw already a comment in the chat section that says that we cannot afford to pay for climate. We cannot afford to pay the consequences, for instance, of climate. Thank you again. Thank you so, so much, Femi. And while you were speaking, I think Ade joined the call. And so I'd like to say a huge welcome to Ade. We couldn't have gone on this conversation without your input, really, because we were very much looking forward to your insights on how access to finance really can help build or drive sustainable food systems in Africa. So it's nice to have you, Ade. We've read your brilliant profile and all of the hats that you wear, and it's such an honor to have you on the session today.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces here. My sister Victoria, comment ça va? Tu es bien? Ça bouge? On n'est pas dit pas avec l'agriculture. Sorry guys, I have to speak in French. I'm on a flight. The flight was delayed. Not my fault. You know, the typical Nigerian flights. I had said to myself, I will speak from my car. But right now, I was able to make it. I'm in my office.
Glad you made it.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen and distinguished panelists, I want to really thank you for having me on this. And on behalf of Olam Agri, which I represent as the Director of Corporate and Regulatory Affairs, I want to speak to the issues in a very succinct manner. As those of you who know me on panels, I am very direct. So for us, we look at things in a very strategic, intentional, and deliberate way. Access to finance is something that is at the core of how we do business, and to do business in a sustainable manner, we need to be deliberate, intentional, and make sure that we actualize these things. So we at Olam Agri have been at the forefront of providing, in a sustainable manner, farmers with inputs, access to finance, and microcredits. We review these things along the lines over time, depending on what I would call the vagaries of the environment. So for us, I mean, sustainability is at the core of what we do. You can only be successful when you have a sustainable business that has what I would call a sustainability pathway. I just came from the agricultural endeavor from Cape Town, and what everybody was speaking to was access to finance on the one hand, logistics on the other, sustainability, and to a large extent, food security. Food security is an integral part of national security. There must be a nexus, and that nexus is what we should be speaking to as a nation. I really want to thank LBS for bringing this to fore, and this is why the likes of LBS and what we call the organized private sector educational institutions bring to bear capacity building. And as we progress, I will add a few more tips as to what is being done, but also for us at Olam Agri, sustainability is at the core of what we do. So we are innovative, and to a large extent, we've been doing this for 35 years and still counting. So our respective investments and footprints across Nigeria particularly are worthy of emulation. Our Olam Agri plant and farm in Nasarawa, 10,500 hectares in totality, 4,500 hectares cultivated, 10% of Nigeria's rice needs being taken care of. That's a big one. Olam palm flour mills, which we have in Apapa, with other footprints across the country in Warri, in Port Harcourt, in Calabar. So we take care of Nigeria's wheat milling requirements to a large extent. I'm not here for bragging rights on who is number one, who is number two, but when I give you one of the largest in that value chain, if I want to say so myself. Thirdly, on the animal feed side, a lot of people talk about animal feed and poultry. Our investment in Kaduna is a manifestation and a testament to what you can achieve when you set your mind to it. I was part of this with a few of my colleagues when we said to ourselves that we wanted to use Nigeria, technically speaking, as a guinea pig for animal feed and poultry. And we started in Kaduna, and we said we finished that facility in a record 16 months, finished in 12 months. That facility was commissioned by the former president of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari. He came from the hospital, landed at Aso Rock, took a helicopter, and came to commission the plant. That is to show the seriousness of food security and animal feed and poultry. The animal feed and poultry has two components. There's animal feed side and there's the fish feed side. The fish feed side is one we have in Ilorin, which is aquaculture. That again speaks to how deliberate and intentional we are as a company to make sure that we cater to the needs of the environment and the ecosystem where we find ourselves. I can go on and on, but this is not a dialogue. This is not a monologue, it's a dialogue. I yield the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ade. That was a whole lot. And I must say that Olam is doing an excellent job. Well done to yourself and the entire team that worked to make access to food possible for Nigerians and Africans in general. And so we can proceed now, all chat up, especially after the 1 minute insights from all of our panelists. We can go on right now to our deliberations, really. And I will be commencing with Jeroen. I know I am pronouncing this name very wrongly, but I hope that you do forgive me, right? I hope that you do forgive me.
You do well. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. So we understand and we have seen some of the implications of climate change, and this is worse with our farmers, okay, especially the smallholder farmers. We have seen consequences like floods. We have seen uncertain weather pattern and conditions really disrupting the planting cycle of farmers. And so my question to you, Jeroen, is how can these smallholder farmers really adapt, how can they adapt to these increasing climate-related challenges? And how can they do so in a cost-effective manner? Because you would understand that cost-effectiveness would be key for every smallholder farmer. And most importantly, the second part of this question speaks to your experience, really. What brilliant examples would you want to point to that would be best case scenarios for us to take back home today on this call?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the question. Yeah, well, it's a big question because there are all kind of different climate effects in various areas and various types of agriculture. But if I speak for a big part of it, relates a lot indeed with too much water or not enough water, which is not the case only in Africa, but even I'm calling in from the Netherlands. Too much water or too little water in some times of the year is a similar type of issue. And one big way of dealing with that is, again, collaboration. So to set up kind of cooperatives and to work together. Why? Because the topic doesn't end at the border of your land. Very often it works in total areas. Another one is to make sure that you can capture the water for times you need it. And that is a lot with models like reforestry. So to make sure that there are trees that keep the water and the shade, that's one, but also crops rotation, to use those type of models. It will be very hard to change that volatility in climate because that very often is a global effect, unfortunately. But again, it starts at single smallholder levels with solutions that not necessarily need a lot of investment. And so like planting trees, well, it takes long. To be honest, in some areas, you can get a tree very quick. It grows very fast. But crop rotation, as I said, as an example. But it is easier if you do that in collaboration. I hope that is a bit of an answer, but very practical and down to earth. Yeah.
Absolutely, Jerome. Thank you. Thank you so much. And it's interesting to again reiterate some of these key points. You have spoken about capturing this water in the form of reforestation and also planting trees, really. And I see that you have really given options that are easy, that would not require too much financing for the smallholder farmers to already implement. And this is really, really important. I know that sometime recently as well, and Victoria may speak more to this, there was a drought in one of our farms. There was like a windstorm or so in one of our farms, and we had to do something about it, planting trees around the farm. So I pretty much like that you have emphasized solutions that are easy, very easy to already implement, and something that would not require a lot of financing to implement. So thank you so much, Jerome. Thank you. We will go on now to just build on what Jeroen has said. Really, we have looked at how smallholder farmers can really be a part of changing the narratives around climate challenges. Okay, now let's look at one of the bigger problems, right, which has to do with the food systems, the logistics. Okay, and the Food and Agriculture Organization already emphasizes the fact that food loss ranges between 30 and 50%. And it's interesting to know that this equates a total of 1.3 billion metric tons of food that fails to reach the final consumer at the end of the day. So all of the efforts that goes into the planting, all of the resources that goes into trying to plant those trees, those food, all of that wasted right before it reaches the consumer. And so, Femi, I will come to you now because I believe you would have key insights here for us. Post-harvest losses are really high across Africa, and we cannot deny or overemphasize this. And so what practical improvements in storage, transportation, and processing would you say would help to reduce these losses? And how might digital and logistical solutions play a role?
Yeah, so thank you very much. I'll make one comment just on the smallholder farming idea first. I think that we have to get to a point where we realize that smallholder farming will not take Africa to a food secure place. I know that's what we have on ground. That is the level where we are operating now. But the objective has to be to take smallholder farmers to a point at which they can form what you would call Voltron. So while I was growing up, there used to be this cartoon called Voltron, and Voltron was a much bigger, a much more potent defender or combatant that was formed from much smaller tigers.
Absolutely.
And I think South Africa has to think about this problem. How do we cluster those smallholder farmers together so that they are in a position to better benefit from the requirements for us to commercialize agriculture? So let's now talk about the post-harvest loss side of things. As soon as you cluster the farmers and you put them in a point where they can all come together, then the business case makes sense for investors to come in and put in the assets that are required, whether they are silos, cold storage infrastructure, etc. In addition, for example, the Oyo State government has been doing something that's really interesting. They've done it in Fashola and they're doing it in Erua as well, which is essentially to build pretty much like an agro, like a special production zone where you have all of the assets that are required. There could be storage infrastructure, there could be mechanization, everything you need, all within a pretty much 3,000, 5,000 hectare kind of space. And then all other farmers within the neighborhood can piggyback on the assets that are already put in there. So the first thing is there's no leapfrogging assets. You need assets for agriculture. But how do you build that business case, which is clustering? I think the infrastructure has to be put in place. That's like top priority. The second part of it is what I call the consumer side of things, right? The demand for food depends on consumer spending. The best case scenario is for people to be able to consume fresh food that is not preserved at all. Now, if people cannot afford to spend, it means that your post-harvest losses would go higher. So that's a policy side solution. Then you have the required processing. That's necessary. I mean, you need necessary processing infrastructure, whether it's in tomatoes, whether it's in processing grains into feed or into food stock, etc. All of those things are generally required. But in terms of the technology side, I know, for example, in China, there's all of this market linkage platforms where a farmer is probably producing tomatoes or producing apples in a rural area, but the system has sort of been designed in such a way that there's sufficient connecting transportation and logistical infrastructure, which ensures that, just that farmer can just put their products online and somebody in the city essentially orders them, and the transportation makes it seamless. So you can already see that, it's not just going to be just about digital solutions. It's going to be a combination of both hardware and software. It's going to be, humanware. It's going to be strategic thinking at the policy level, from the government side, from the corporates. So think about it. If Friesland Campina, for example, goes into my village in Ilora and builds a massive milking facility there, they're able to absorb all of the dairy products that are produced by all the farmers there. Fantastic infrastructure has already been built, which means, within 1 hour to 2 hours, if the roads are fantastic, you could actually have that milk on the shelves of ShopRite at almost the cheapest cost available, because those farmers are able to turn around their milking activities in a very quick way. So the way I look at these things are that, Africa still, and Nigeria especially, which is where I come from, needs to build, from a policy point of view, a holistic solution that works for everybody. And the truth is, it's not just going to be the private sector. It's going to be everybody forming Voltron. Thank you very much.
That is amazing insight you have shared there, Femi. Thank you so much. Thank you. And what I hear you say is, look, smallholder farmers cannot take us where we want to be. Yes, it is a great initiative to engage smallholder farmers and invest in them, but pretty much we need to aggregate these farmers. We need to give them access to infrastructure, financing from an aggregated standpoint, so to speak. And so we don't have people operating in silos, really, as the case may be. And I also see that you have mentioned something very, very key, that a holistic solution that works is what we need in Nigeria. So we need to move past solving issues, one sector or one bit at a time, but look at a holistic way of really, tackling issues heads on. And I mean, we need to go past the talkings as well to actually acting. So I hear you as well when you talk about collaborations, and other speakers as well have really highlighted collaborations. We need to come together as Africans and see how we can learn best practices from across each other. I mean, Ade had spoken to us about something that Olam is doing greatly, and I'm sure that Victoria will do a whole lot of information sharing as well on the fantastic initiatives, but we can still learn a lot from each other. We don't need to reinvent the wheel where something is already working. We can save time, we can save resources when we work together, as a team towards ensuring sustainable food systems. So thank you again, Femi, really, for that very insightful contribution. And I would like to say to our audiences, it's really getting very interesting so far. And so feel free to drop any contributions or questions that you may have in the chat, and I'll be sure to touch on them very, very shortly. Building on what Femi has the insights that Femi has shared with us, I'd like to move to another segment or another area that is really, really key, which is financing. And Ade, I'll be coming to you with this question, really. We know that finance remains a huge barrier really for African farmers. And I would like to leverage your wealth of experience being in a lot of positions of authority around commerce and industry organizations or parastatals, for lack of a better way to put it, to ask this question on what innovative financing models really would you say would support the adoption of sustainable practices. So what sustainable financing models would you recommend, especially for smallholder farmers in Nigeria? And maybe let's not just even focus on smallholder farmers, like Femi has said. Really, generally speaking, for farmers, whether aggregators or individual smallholder farmers, what sustainable financing models would work in your opinion and from your experience?
Thank you very much, Chinwe. What Femi spoke to, there's a school of thought that really believes that small-scale farmers don't move the needle, and you see, it's not a yes and no answer. You have to look at it from a prism and a lens of practicability and adaptability. As we speak right now in Nigeria and Africa, we have two issues that are confronting us. We have an availability problem and an affordability problem. Food is not readily available. And when it's readily available, it's not readily affordable. So you are in a quagmire or in a catch-22 situation. Everybody talks about financing. Financing itself is not a silver bullet, as people tend to look at it, particularly in what I will call the countries like ours or developing countries. For example, I believe that farmers should be supported via microcredits through their cooperatives, particularly the smallholder ones. In these cooperatives that you already have people who are captured in the net by the systems. So the likes of all these respective intervention funds that we have is throwing money at things that we don't have a plan for. The Indian model is a good model whereby you have an identity number that speaks to who you are. They can track from the beginning to the end. But here in Africa, and particularly Nigeria, we're not there yet. But I always try to tell people that let's not be looking at the challenges, let's look at the solutions. Absolutely. How can we, get that last mile of funding to support what we do? The best way to do that is to have multinationals like ours, for example, Olam Agri and Nestle, have a pool of funds somewhere and support farmers to do what they know how to do best for us. I, for example, supply coffee to Nestle. Okay? Nestle says to themselves, Olam, as much as you are the one supplying me coffee, I want to just even know the farmers that you have in your ecosystem. What are you doing for them in terms of support and agricultural practices? So Nestle, as much as I'm selling my coffee to Nestle, Nestle too wants to know on a traceability front how and where my coffee tracing is coming from. And there's collaboration amongst us. So there must be collaboration, particularly with the source and destination. So the farmers that we have in look at Nasarawa, for example. We have 35,000 farmers in our fold for Nasarawa. That's a lot. The investment in Nasarawa is between $140 and $160 million. It's big, it's massive. But you know what? In spite of that, as a large corporate, Olam Agri still supplies only 10% of Nigeria's rice needs with a $160 million investment. So when Femi was speaking to the fact that it's not a smallholder farmer issue, he was very right. If you put 300,000 as smallholder farmers to help you with your sourcing for your production, you will still not get anywhere. So we need to have large swaths of land and ecosystems that we can make it very commercially viable. But you need the large players to come in and put their money where their mouth is. But the large players are ready, but the regulatory environment is not friendly. I mean, I don't understand why a country like ours should be buying tractors or buying plows. The Ministry of Agriculture has no business in doing things like this. I'm sure Jerome will agree with me. Jerome, I believe you're Dutch, aren't you? You're from Netherlands. Or are you Belgian?
No, I'm Dutch.
You're Dutch. So people talk about the Dutch. The Dutch have been so adept at providing food with their famous windmill that virtually everything is possible. they are the largest producer of the food production in Holland is akin to that can feed and finance 20-25 countries. Am I lying, Jerome? Holland is so pure that its exports across the European Union is massive. That just speaks to you the scale, the size, and the kind of deliberate effort they put into it. So for me, I don't usually like coming to speak at fora like this and talking about what potential and all that. I'm 55 years old. I was 55 two weeks ago, and we've been talking about potential for the last 40 years of my life. When I was 15, my father told me, Nigeria, potential. Potential is not what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
We're talking about how to realize that potential and do it properly. What is worth doing is worth doing well.
Absolutely.
Let's speak to the issues, but let's not go into that frame of what doesn't get measured doesn't get done. We don't need to sit down here signing MOUs that will lead to nowhere. The MOUs we signed before now, what did you do with them? Who's monitoring? There's no monitoring and evaluation. That's the problem. We speak to a lot of things, but there's too much mantra speak. There's always something. If it's not agricultural change agenda, it is a green revolution. If it's not green revolution, it's Operation Feed the Nation. If it's not Operation Feed the Nation, it's now hope renewed. If it's not now hope renewed, what do you want to do? Well, hoping for hope realized. I leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ade. That was really, really insightful. And in the summary, what I hear you say is enough of the talking, really. Enough of the talking. Let's begin to act. We have done a whole lot of talking. Let us act and act rightly. Let us put the money where we need to ensure that our food systems stay resilient. Thank you so much for that very brilliant insights, Ade. And so building on what Ade has said as well, I would want to direct a question now to Victoria. Victoria, you are the expert with advocacy, with strategic collaborations, championing private sector's voice really in ensuring that the change that we look to see actually comes to bear. And so my question for you, Victoria, is how do you see government and private sector as well as NGOs collaborating? Everyone has spoken so much about collaboration. Okay, so how do you see these three stakeholders collaborating for sustainable food systems in Africa? And what successful examples really would you want to point to in your practice really and in your space as something that's driving sustainable agriculture on the continent?
Thank you very much, and great listening to Oren, Femi, and Ade. And I think that just in the last two points, Femi and Ade spoke about collaboration, smallholder farmers, and then Femi, Ade is reminding us of Operation Feed the Nation and all of that. Well, I'll say, if we talk about collaboration between public sector, private sector, and NGOs, I would like to ask a very, it might seem like a very easy question to answer. Collaborating around what exactly? As long as there is no synergy of goals and ambitions, what are we collaborating around? Yes, there have been examples of collaboration around critical things, but if you look at them closely, they are around specific problems or challenges that are within our own space. So every stakeholder is doing quite a bit. Government is doing quite a bit. Private sector is doing quite a bit. The NGOs are doing quite a bit, but everybody is doing it in their own space and on the things that they think, the things that they consider important within their own spaces or to meet their own business goals or their ambitions or their sustainability commitments. If we're going to collaborate, there must be a clear synergy around what we're collaborating about. Ade just spoke now. What are the policies about? Did they take into consideration the real need of the farmers, the ones who were depending on to produce the food? If we're talking about Femi's Voltron, what is Voltron going to be solving for? Usually there is a key protagonist and there is a challenge that is identified and everybody knows what we're fighting against. But if we brought together a Voltron in this climate where we're in, one hand of Voltron might be solving for another thing, while the other hand is disrupting what the right hand is solving. So What are we doing? Where are we going? What is our plan for feeding Africa? What is our plan for a resilient food system? What is our plan for ensuring that we have food security? What are the real challenges with food security? And we cannot keep glossing over it. Security, economic stability, food security, they are closely linked, and you cannot do one without the other. It doesn't work that way. So I think that the first thing I would like to recommend, yes, Ade says we've talked a lot, but we need to slow down again to be able to go fast. We need to come together. I really strongly recommend a convening of stakeholders, real convening, identifying the critical stakeholders, including those of you and I are the public that needs to be fed. The population that we're looking at in the next few years, that is who needs to be fed. We're talking about availability. We're talking about affordability. You gave us the data around post-harvest losses in a country where, or on a continent where hunger is a critical problem. Why are we losing 60% of our food? It's because we're not thinking right. I'm sorry. We're not analyzing what needs to be done right. We're not putting our money in the place where we need to put our money in. If we get the support that we need, where are we putting it? What are we doing? It's very clear. It's not rocket science. Ensure that the infrastructure is there. Once you ensure that the infrastructure is there, what needs to be done will be done. Private sector will invest where private sector needs to invest. Now, let me tell you a story. And I know that Ade has the same story. So we're working with a group with dairy farmers. You can't do anything without paying for it on a daily basis, right? And we say, okay, when we have to ensure that they are financially included so that we can use the available apps and technology to pay and then to receive the milk when it's done. And we find that they do not have bank accounts. Why? Because there are no banks close to them. Nobody has even come to register them. They don't have NIN. They don't have any identification. There is nothing. And so we had to go and bring the agency to come and register. We have to go and bring the banks to come and register them and include them. This is not supposed to be the job of the private sector investor. These are things that are supposed to be done, right? But because we're all acting in different places, we're doing things that we think is important. The Ministry of Agriculture thinks, okay, oh, the farmers need mechanization, so we're going to buy the trucks. Where are you putting the trucks on? How are the trucks going to get to the farms? So honestly, the first thing that we need to think about when we think about collaboration is not how do we collaborate. I don't think that we have a problem with knowing what the problems are. I think we have a problem with knowing how should we solve the problem and who should do what, who fits into Voltron, so that everybody is playing their part and we're one unit going together. Look, Nigeria is a microcosm, but Nigeria is a picture of the rest of Africa. This is what is going on. If you go from Ivory Coast to Ghana to anywhere that you go to, post-harvest losses is a problem. Kenya, that's a problem. South Africa, that's a problem. Wherever you look, that's a problem. And we need to look at ourselves as one unit. I mean, Femi spoke earlier. Why should we cultivate maize if that's not our strong point? I remember, when we're sourcing grains from the northern part of Nigeria, our factories are located in the southwest, and someone comes to me and says, oh, we produce maize here. Why are you going to the north to buy? We are producing there because that is where we can produce better. And that's where we know that we will have less incidents of contamination, right? Because of the type of soil, because of the weather and all of that. So we must be able to identify our strong points. We must be able to identify where the issues are. We must be able to identify what common goal we're all working towards, so that when I'm engaging the farmers, I know that, okay, I'm engaging this farmer to produce this because this is where it fits. I'm engaging this person to do this because this is where it fits. You can't just bring the company and the government and the farmers together and sit in one room and say, okay, they produce no, we need to come together, slow down, think through this thing, and then have a cohesive plan that will help us to address the real issues that Africa has, because our issues are very, very clear. We need security. We need to feed our people, and we need to grow our economy. And the three of them must work together. As long as we're not able to look at agriculture as a key focus area, because I mean, now we're talking about the AFCTA, but I don't see agriculture front and central, but this is our superpower. This is where we need to put all our effort in. For the AFCTA to survive, we need to look at agriculture, the whole of the value chain, from farm to the factory to production, to putting it on the shelf, and to ensuring that people have food in the long term. These are things that are very simple to do. And that's the first step that I really strongly recommend we need to come together, engage each other, and align on what we need to do. So Ade knows what Olam needs to do. Victoria knows what Nestle needs to do. Femi knows what Foot Locker needs to do. Warren knows what he needs to do to bring it all together to the table so that we're building for an Africa that we want for the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Victoria. That was very in-depth. Thank you. Thank you. And I hear you loud and clear. We need to have clear goals, okay? We need to have clear synergies as well. I mean, it's not enough that we know what to do, but we need to know what the end goal is. What is the overarching objective where everyone begins to say, okay, this is my area of expertise, this is my area of strength, and so I want to own or champion this particular cause. So that is really important. And I do hope that one of the outcomes of conferences like this would be really a convening of these stakeholders. And I mean, I don't know if that would be the responsibility of the Lagos Business School, but I'm sure that it would be great to have that as an outcome, as next steps really that would follow from conferences like this. Thank you so much, Victoria. And we will need to run really because now we are running out of time. And so I'll ask our dear panelists to please maybe give the feedback or the inputs as short as possible, as close as possible to say 2 minutes, if we can. I know it's a lot to ask, but just so that we can manage time very efficiently. Femi, I'll come back to you now, and this is on digital tools. You are the boss here, right? Digital tools and precision agriculture. We know that this plays an interesting and an interesting role really in improving food production and resilience in Africa. But I would like to know, and I'm sure the audiences would also like to know, what are the barriers really to widespread adoption of precision agriculture, and how can we overcome these?
Yes, thank you very much. Several barriers. I think barrier number one is the cost. Precision agriculture is not cheap. You need to install sensors. You need to put in place infrastructure. Second, also you can think about the competence levels of the people who would use them. And also this issue of the farmers actually not being together, and therefore they cannot benefit from these investments that take place in terms of infrastructure. Then you talk also about this for me is actually a major problem. The quality of internet and network connectivity we have in Nigeria is a joke. It is a joke. There is no way we can say we want to run large-scale precision agriculture projects without having, whether it's going to be, internet, whether it's going to be solid, decent, basic GSM, whether it's going to be basic GPRS, whatever it is, we need to make sure that, that there's sufficient technology backbone that can support all of this data that has to go onto the platform. So you're collecting a lot of data from the field, you're putting them in there. And then you have issues also around literacy. How do you fix them? We've talked about clustering. Really quick, you cluster all the farmers, you dedicate 1,000 hectares, 100 hectares, put all the farmers there, they can all share resources. Two, I saw something in Morocco, it was somewhere in Morocco. They had agricultural graduates that were empowered with digital technology, and they were working with the farmers on the farms. So they had developed those areas, transportation was good, and they would go into those farms, help the farmers collect their data, do all of the things that are required. Then you also have extension services that,
I mean, you have maybe 30 seconds, please.
Yeah, I'll do that really quick.
Thank you.
Most important is rural development. And I think that's like the most important, rural development. If you have rural development, you can very quickly deploy precision agriculture. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Femi. Thank you. I think I will be connecting personally to get more insights on precision agriculture, really. Thank you for sharing all of that. And we will have to wrap up at this point because we're really, really running out of time. But I will come to the rest of our dear panelists with a closing. What would you want us to have as a key takeaway as we go from this? And maybe just one sentence, really. One sentence to wrap up the mindset, what really we should take away from this. Victoria?
Thank you. We all need to work together, but we all need to align on a common goal that we're working towards. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Victoria. Working together is really key. And Ade, what would it be for you? One statement, please.
Well, one statement will fit in, but I will just quickly say that we must be very strategic, we must be intentional, we must be deliberate, we must be collaborative, and we must encourage public-private partnership. Public-private partnerships create what you call shared prosperity. Shared prosperity will make sure that we ensure we achieve food security.
Thank you so much, Ade. PPP, public-private partnerships, to ensure that we have shared what do you call it? Shared benefits, as the case may be, leveraging each stakeholder's area of expertise. Thank you so much, Ade and Jeroen. I still am saying that name wrongly.
No, you're fine. Well, building on what is said before, I only want to stress on the example I gave on the introduction of mobile phones, but also there are a lot of good examples already available in Africa as well as in Nigeria. So it also has a lot to do with confidence and belief. So stop talking about what is difficult and challenges and what is not possible, because actually there's a lot of proof that a lot is possible in Africa and countries like Nigeria. So it's confidence and belief.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jeroen. Thank you. Nothing is difficult if we put our minds to it. And of course, we must work together as a team. And so today we're taking back home a lot of feedback and a lot of great insights that's been shared by panelists, the importance of collaborative innovation across sectors, the need for proactive policies to support sustainable practices, and the role of community-centered solutions in driving excellence. Thank you so much to our dear panelists. Unfortunately, we didn't have the time to look at the chat section like I promised, but I do know that Canon will attend to the questions when I do hand over to him. So on behalf of the entire team, really, I want to thank our panelists for your time, for your insights, for sharing with us all of these great insights that you have today, and to our audience for the great engagement as well. We carry all of these key learnings forward as we work towards a future where Africa's food systems are both sustainable and resilient. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll hand over to Canon now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much, Chinwe Obi, and thank you very much to our very, very brilliant and knowledgeable panelists. Thank you very much. That was educative. I have 2 pages full of information, and I'm very sure you all enjoyed the session as well. And to those that have questions, feel free to reach out to the panelists in the chat column, or you can reach out to us and with your questions, and we'll reach out to them. Because we are very time conscious here in Lagos Business School, we try to stick to the allotted time. And in that regards, we'll skip the next video and jump right into the next panel session, because I can see the speakers and moderators for the panel session. The next panel session are hanging around, standing by, ready to do justice to this. So I would hand right over to the distinguished moderator, who is going to introduce our speakers and moderate the panel. So with a warm round of applause, let's welcome the CEO, Catalyst Experience Solution, none other than Isioma Utomi. Over to you, Isioma.
All right, thank you so much, Otto. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for being with us on this afternoon. We appreciate your time. We do not take it for granted. Let us know in the chat how you're feeling about the previous sessions. I've gained so much. I have lots of notes on my own. So please let us know in the chat how you're feeling. Have you got a lot of value so far? Yes, please let us know in the chat. What did you think of the speakers from the last panel? Excellent. So I'd like to very quickly, because we are running a little behind on time, I'd like to quickly introduce and bring up our panelists. So we have a Dr. Silk Ogu, Associate Professor of LBS. We also have Adeswa Ladoja, the CEO of Lagos Free Zone. We have Professor Jonathan Aremu, who is part of the head of Industrial Trade and Investment Policy Commission at NESG. So if we could have them up, that would be great. I would like them to introduce themselves, and then we can kick off the panel as soon as possible. Hi, Adeswa, I see you. If we could pin her So, excellent. Welcome, welcome. If we could have Professor Aremu, I see him as well. Welcome. And Dr. Silk, if he's able to join, I know he was having a few challenges, but once he's able to join, please let him, just have him up on the screen. All right, let's get started. Just because we're conscious on time, I'm going to ask that you briefly introduce yourself and then let us know why is this topic important. We're talking about industrial policies that are needed in Africa to boost production and non-oil exports. So I'm particularly interested in this topic because I started my own career in manufacturing, advanced manufacturing in the United States before moving to Nigeria. And it's such a critical part of what can boost the economy and so related to the discussion that we're having today about sustainability and all the activities we're talking about related to it. So if I could have Adesola Lajeja kick us off. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. And it's really been a very exhilarating webinar. A lot of passion, a lot of enthusiasm for the topics being discussed. So my name is Adesola, and I'm the MD of Lagos Free Zone. This is a topic that is close to our hearts in Lagos Free Zone because of the whole industrialization aspects of it. We have a free zone, which is divided into clusters that enables manufacturers and other types of businesses to come in here and have a very, very cohesive and harmonious environment to do business in Nigeria. And this is very important for us as Nigerians because oil is a finite resource, and we need to look into other things as well. And we are a people that have so many other resources that have been left unexploited. And we don't have any choice now but to actually now go ahead and look into these aspects so that we can have the wherewithal to cater for the exploding population that is Nigeria and Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we have Professor Jonathan Aremu. If you could kindly introduce yourself and let us know a bit why this topic about industrial policies is so critical for us right now in the conversation.
Thank you, our moderator, as well as other people listening to me from different parts of Africa and other parts of the world as well. Yes, just like my sister said, the person that spoke before me, that industrial policy is very important. Extremely important, and because her background was in that area. But it's more important because the title of what we are discussing is tied to Africa. And you know, a major thing now in Africa is the African Continental Free Trade Area. And while they are choosing this topic, I thought that those people better they knew my mind, because you see, it's one area, one protocol that is left unattended to. We already have 8 protocols on the African Continental Free Trade Area. We have trade in goods, trade in services, we have dispute settlement, we have investment, intellectual property, we have competition, we have e-commerce, we have women and youth. But there is no protocol on industry. Yet, industry, trade and investment is a tricycle. In order a tricycle, if one tire is bad, the tricycle will not work. So it's a very good thing that you are choosing this topic. That is industry, investment and trade. The 3 of them work hand in hand. And therefore, for choosing this, you're actually pinpointing to the entire African community that they need to have one more protocol, which is the protocol on industry. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And I love that you brought up AFCTA. I mean, obviously, it's a huge topic and has been a huge topic for a couple of years. So from your perspective, so how can the AFCTA be leveraged to maximize those non-oil export opportunities in Africa? Because I think that, like as you said, there's still a lot of ground to be covered. So what would be your own recommendations to facilitate smoother intra-Africa trade? Adesola?
Thank you for this question. So the AFTA hasn't really had the impact that we would have expected. And I think that part of the reason for that is the fact that we need to reduce the barriers. We need to streamline all the regulatory frameworks at ports and borders. We need to streamline the customs processes. We need to harmonize them. Once we do that, then things will be able to move flawlessly from one country to the other. And Lagos Free Zone has a logistics hub together with an integrated deep sea port that can facilitate this type of trade. Thank you.
Fantastic. And Professor Aramu?
Well, let me distance myself from my sister. Why? Because you see, we are just starting the process. African Economic Community Treaty came in 1991. And then the first step in the economic integration is a free trade area. Other phases are customs union, common market, and economic union. We are just on the first stage. And the guided trade initiative, Nigeria just entered it just about 4 months ago. So the impact will come sequentially. It cannot be rushed. But what we are saying is that African Continental Free Trade Area is the only option for Africa. Former colonies, cheated by the entire global space. Our trade volume is less than 3% of the total global trade. We trade with other external people than Africa. But right now, we would say we want to trade among ourselves. So the opportunity is so huge. When this thing came up and then President Buhari did not sign, I came on TV and I said, that's a wrong step. And they told me to come and defend why I should accuse President for not signing. I said, well, that's the only way to go. Because if a factory you are afraid of from South Africa, put his factory in Cote d'Ivoire, put it in the Republic of Benin, we do not export to Nigeria. So and that is it. So African Continental Free Trade Area is the best way to go. And therefore, it will have impact as we go along, my sister. It is not too late. The free trade zone you have is a very great opportunity. Very great opportunity for it. And we are perfecting the kind of policies that will guide all those things under ECOWAS Commission, under Nigeria, and part of the ECOWAS that is looking at special economic zones across the entire 50-member states.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you very much. We're very anxious for it to start properly and to be successful because truly Africa needs it. It doesn't make any sense that if I want to travel to an African country, I have to go through Europe, or it's faster to go to London than to go to an African country. It breaks my heart. So we are all very anxious. Thank you, Professor.
Yes, ma'am.
So true. I always hear these conversations when people are like, oh, we're going to East Africa and we're just branching through France or we're branching through like Dubai to go there. And it baffles me truly. So I hear that Dr. Silk is online. If we could have him up on the screen, that would be great. If you turn on your video, they'll be able to pin you to the screen so that we can do introductions. All right. So until he gets on stage, I just have a quick question, because again, we've been talking about governments and the role in AFCTA, but even like a fundamental question in just Nigeria specifically, like infrastructure. I mean, we've had a few grid problems, to say the least, in recent weeks or months. So from that perspective, how can African governments prioritize infrastructure development in a way that would actually support non-oil exports? Like I said, I used to work in manufacturing, and in manufacturing, we're running generators 24/7. It's ridiculous. So I'm curious, what role do you think perhaps public-private partnerships can play in developing that kind of infrastructure, for instance? Professor Aramu?
Well, thank you so much. Let me just start with what my sister Adesua actually said briefly. She did not expand. There is need for huge infrastructure, even for African Continental Free Trade Area to work. Last week, I addressed something very crucial. And what is that? The transportation logistics. And she just mentioned it. Because air transport, sea transport, road transport, all this kind of thing. It is not in the program of Afteryear to have what I call multimodal transportation system. A multimodal transportation system is a system that will allow me in my village in Kwara State to produce and send it by road to the nearest railway station. A railway will pick the goods up, send it to Lagos. And then in Lagos, it will go to the port. And then the port will carry it to maybe Kenya. And in Kenya, it's going to be taken by air to where it is going. A multimodal system of transportation is a system that will link the transportation mode, that will facilitate the movement of the product, and is going to reduce perishability, is going to reduce certainty. That has not been put there. That has not been developed. So, but we are going there. We are going to develop it. At the domestic end, quite a lot of our road system, well, the train is just being worked upon, is not perfect yet. All these things must be very good so that we can trade on the African continental free trade area. The initial railway we have in Africa, one particular country cannot link the other one. The railway system in Nigeria cannot link the Republic of Benin because the gauges are different. And therefore, even the road system, we have been talking of Nigerian Dakar, kind of a road system, is yet to be operational. We are talking of Trans-Sahara route. All this one as a consultant in ECOWAS, ECOWAS Commission, all these are what we wanted, but they are not there yet. But we are moving there. But I'm suggesting that through collaboration, countries in ECOWAS, countries in Africa, to make sure they collaborate under infrastructural development to facilitate all these goods we are talking about. Even when you are talking of services, which is the fastest growing sector in the Nigerian economy now, quite a lot of infrastructure have to be put in place, the IT and the cost of it, so that at the touch of a button, things can move. So let me just stop here. But but infrastructure is very basic for effective implementation of African continental free trade area.
Absolutely. All right. I'd like to bring up Dr. Silk Obu. Dr. Silk, if you're online, kindly unmute. So, okay, I see you there. If you could kindly unmute, you would just have a quick introduction. Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Yes.
Excellent. Welcome, Dr. Silk. So we're just talking about the industrial policies are related to improving non-oil exports. And so right now we're discussing infrastructure. So, you know, from African governments, the limited budget, resources. So what is your perspective on how we could potentially improve that for us? And please introduce yourself first, quick introduction, and then we can go straight into your response.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. It's very good to pleasure to be on this call and to join this interesting and very pivotal conversation. My name is Silk Obu. I teach at the Lagos Business School at the Department of Human Resources Management and Organizational Behavior, and I'm an associate professor. I teach mostly management communication, conflict resolution, and a few other soft skills. Today, this conversation is really a big one because we need to move the infrastructure that we have to a level where it can support the growth of industrialization in Nigeria and in Africa as a whole. So my take would be, or my sense would be, that the basic place to start from, or to most focus on, is power. I don't know if we've discussed that yet, but you know, power is such a foundational infrastructure that it supports the growth of all other infrastructure that we may need. And how have we moved in terms of policy in this direction? So we know that recently, you know, states have started to respond to the need to build their own power plants and all that. But how realistic is this policy, you know, in terms of really creating value? Are we seeing growth in the power sector yet? Or are people still carrying portfolios around and pretending to be doing business in the power sector? And it takes a lot of time and money and, you know, and effort to develop this sector. And this is the most serious sector that we should support to increase industrialization. All of us are familiar with the national grid collapse. And now we should be looking at multiple, you know, or multi-pronged solutions to this big elephant in the room. So my take will be that, you know, the policy direction should look at how to really drive the increase in power generation, in power distribution, and even in power transmission. There are so many challenges there that we can address administratively, but my take is that this is one area that most of Africa can focus on now to increase output, in terms of non-oil exports or in terms of adding value to our exports. Let me start from here, and then others can also join. Thank you.
Excellent, and thank you for that, Dr. Obu. So Professor Aramu already got the ball rolling in this area around infrastructure and the like. Before we go, we're going to move into the next section related to what you do, Dr. Silk, around workforce development. I'm curious about your own perspective on this. So obviously we have a very youthful population, and yet somehow we don't seem to have the talent that's required for this. Like I said, in one of my early deployments, when I moved back to Nigeria, we had a project, but we didn't have the manpower for it locally. So I'm curious, what are some of the policy recommendations you give, especially related to education and vocational education policy as well, because that's a huge part of what drives manufacturing, for instance.
Okay, so I believe that, yes, if we really want to increase our level of production or industrialization, we have to look at human resources development, how to capacitate the talents that we have. And that is obviously where we have an advantage, because while other countries seem to have, an aging population, we do have quite a lot of youth in our own population. But what kind of education are we offering? That is the basic question to ask. It appears that most of us have gotten used to seeking for certification as a means of validation. But when we are done with the certificates, are they really very useful, to us? In the sense that, do they help us to, expand the value creation? So we need to rethink how we educate our people. The rote learning has always been, for me, a challenge, because what we consider as intelligence, is when someone is able to regurgitate what you have told them. So those that are very smart in classes are those that are able to remember the things that we have said to them while we were in school, while we were in the classrooms. But we should be expanding other approaches to learning, experiential learning, where people can actually imagine things, create things. So we need to take this down to the primary school level and start to change the focus on rote learning, so that at that level, thinking about innovation, young people are encouraged to think outside of the box. So we can begin to also de-emphasize, the certificates, like so many other people. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with getting the necessary qualifications or certificates, but we should also find ways of validating knowledge acquisition, in other ways, right? And that will open the door for people who are not able to do the theoretical things, but were more inclined with practical and experiential ways of learning, to find value and to find validation, and also opportunities to express their talent. So at that level, that primary school level, we really need to come down there and start to build that critical mass. So all the things that we're doing recently about STEM, encouraging people to think more, in this direction of creating, that organizational focus on thinking deeply, on deep thinking, is for me a very important shift. So yes, education should drive our results, but not just to validate who we are. I think that's where we need to get it right. So my tip would be, let's come down and do things differently from the primary school vocational levels. So we promote more of vocational interests than just getting certificates for validation. Thank you.
100% agree. And I saw Adeswa nodding her head. Would you like to add something to that? It's a huge topic.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Silk, because you really hit the nail on the head. So, we are developing 850 hectares on the Lagos Free Zone, and a lot of what we're doing is construction. And what we found is that the quality of workmen that you find is really not up to par. And it's not even from primary school, train them in that way. It is for us to see vocational training, plumbers, electricians, welders, for you to see them as respectable jobs that command, that if you have the experience, then you get paid very well. The Consul General of Switzerland was at the zone recently, and he was telling us an anecdote. He said that his plumber in Vienna drives a Mercedes-Benz, the latest version of the Mercedes-Benz, because he charges him a lot of money. And that is the value, and that's the quality and the importance to which these countries have placed such vocational training. We found that we had to develop an industrial training center to upskill, the young people, so that there's no stigmatization. They are learning, and they are very keen to learn. And there are lots of them. As Dr. Silk has said, we have a very youthful population. And if they are trained properly, then they can do a lot of things. And the cost of building will come down, because then you don't need to import workmen. There are people who, when they are building, they have to bring in people from Cotonou. Some workers have to come from India, from Arab countries, and all of that. But we have this skill here. We can train ourselves. And it's all about a mental shift, a reorientation of our mindset to some of these professions and vocations. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. And I'll come to you, Professor Aramo, because I would want your comment on this, because she talked about building your own industrial training center, which I find a lot of organizations do. If you want it done, you have to build your own situation. So I'm curious as to your own perspective. What is government's role in this? How can we work together to do more in this area in terms of providing the talent that actually meets industrial demand?
Thank you very much, my sister. I really enjoyed the last two speakers on what they are talking about. When we started Covenant University, I was the acting vice chancellor. And one of the things that we put in place was entrepreneur development studies. We already see that whether we want or not, there's going to be diminishing opportunity for work in the future. And therefore, we need to empower these students. And therefore, EDS becomes a very compulsory subject for every of our students, even postgraduate students. We make sure that we train them so that everybody has something to do apart from the book. You see, when you look back into economics, and you look at Samuel Kuznets' theory on economic development has three phases: the primary phase, the processing phase, and then the tertiary phase. As an economy progresses, the share of primary goes down in deployment. The share of processing increases. And when the economy is growing faster, like developed country, the tertiary, the share of services sector become very high. Now, the share of services is contributing about 53.8% of the growth in our Nigerian GDP, which means that the economy is on the verge of growing. And many of our youth, they are in this area where they can contribute immensely. And then we have to thank the African Continental Free Trade Area for bringing on board the Youth Protocol, the Youth and Women Protocol, which is the last that was signed in February this year, so as to be able to empower the youth so that they can engage in all these productive activities, so that they can make sure that there is opportunity for them. And under trading services again, African Continental have allowed for the four mode of services to move across borders: through internet, through consumption abroad, through commercial presence, and through movement of natural person. That is mode 1, mode 2, mode 3, mode 4. Under mode 1, you can stay in your room and then be doing a work that you can send over the internet and make money. And a lot of Nigerian youth are doing that now. That is mode 1. Mode 2 is where you stay, like I stay in my Covenant University. And then people come and learn and I collect money. It's an export to me. So you come to come and enjoy it, but it's an export because you are paying me when you come. Mode 3 is that I can even put a branch of Covenant University elsewhere in other African countries. And mode 4 is that I can allow some of my professors to go and give lecture and come back. All these opportunities are opening up. And we need to allow people to know them. Now, what is the role of government? Government is the one that signed African Continental Free Trade Area. But they need to propagate and sensitize the economy enough. Luckily, I was privileged to develop the National Strategy for African Continental Free Trade Area. But we have not been able to do much in that area. The current Chief Executive of African Continental Free Trade Area, Nigerian Office, Coordinating Office, is doing extremely well. That is Segun Awolowo. And therefore, we need to collaborate with him to make sure that not only trading goods, trading services. When you are promoting the trading goods, you go back to the industrial sector to be able to produce what we can export. And that is where we need industrial policy, which has not been attended to. So we need to attend to that as well. You see, I was talking to our ministers of industry, trade, and investment. I said, Nigeria has a trade policy, right? That is May 2003. We equally signed adopted investment policy May 2023, but no industrial policy. And that's the topic of this discussion. Industrial policy is the starting point in where you identify the competitive advantage that you want to develop. That's where you direct investors to go and produce. After the production, that's where you now use the trade policy. But without an effective industrial policy, what we investment policies try to, what will you direct them to? And these are the issues. But government will need to do a lot to be able to harmonize and allow this policy to shake hands, bring on board also the services sector, allow the youth to be engaged productively well, and then make sure we actually implement African Continental Free Trade Area in line with our commitment that will facilitate all these kind of opportunities to be able to allow our workforce to enter the African economy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Aremu. See, this is what happens when you're talking to professors. See, writing notes. Thank you so much for that. I want to talk about SMEs as a key driver of job creation, but I know Dr. Silk has to move. He unfortunately has to leave us, but I'd invite you to just give a few parting words. What would you like to share with us before you leave?
Okay, so I think that most of us would probably agree that the problem we have in this country is not the dearth of policies. We have lots of beautiful policies, and many people have acknowledged that even in our comment section. The problem is with the implementation, the execution of these policies. So my sense is that there's quite a lot we can do with redefining our values. If we can focus more on redefining the values and communicating, these values, especially to the young people, in a way that they can understand it, accept it, adopt them, those values, we'll be making a lot of progress. Otherwise, we keep churning out policies that will never work. Those that implement should be able to lead by example. So because we listen to what people say, but we do exactly what they do. I think that's where, most of us can focus energy on. What are we communicating really? What are we communicating with these policies? We have fine print and we read these policies. Most of us just look at them as, the terms and conditions that we see on the gadgets that we buy, right? You know that you're going to say agree at the end, but did you actually read them? So are we reading through just because we want to say, okay, yes, government, are we designing these policies because we have the intentions of implementing them? Because if we do, I think that we should come down to what is most important. This government has a lot of good policies, perhaps that can change the country, but do we have a way of communicating them so that people can understand and accept them and even adopt them? Because what we have now is a challenge where there's probably a trust deficit between government and the people. So communication is very critical here. And that communication doesn't have to be just verbal. It's also about what we do and how we signal, what is important, the values that we define. I think if we also incorporate that in thinking a way forward, we'll be making more progress. I hate to leave, but I have to go into class. I thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to be part of this conference.
Thank you so much, Dr. Silk. Again, valuable insights, understanding what we value. It's really important to know what we prioritize. If not, what direction are we going in? So thank you so much for those insights and have fun in class. All right. So anyone, if you have questions, I will be rounding up soon. So if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box and we'll do our best to see if we can get to one or two before we close. But let's talk about just SMEs quickly. What can we say? Obviously they're a huge driver of, the economy in Africa as a whole. What kind of policies can government provide that would actually allow them to scale up effectively in this environment and be more productive? Adesua, thoughts?
So two things pop into my head when I hear SMEs. One is capacity building. They need mentorship, they need training, they need technical training, and then they need market access, both locally, both in the African region and internationally. And then how does this happen for them? They need financing. And we need to have a policy around a specific kind of funding for SMEs that they can easily access in terms of documentation, guarantees, and things like that. The pathway to them should be much more streamlined and, concise mode so that it's not difficult. It's not another barrier to them to be able to do this. And then lastly, export platforms, because if you're an SME, how do you scale up? How do they have access to AGOA? How do they have access to the AFCT opportunities? I'm sure Professor will enlighten us about that. But, how to get them to scale up such that it's not playing on a low scale, it's on a large scale. This is the industrialization that we are looking at. Some of the panelists at the last panel, they really spoke about scaling up, about joining together, about banding together for you to see the value of what it is that we are doing. I think in these kind of situations, that's also very important.
Yes, I love the point about Voltron, because I love that show, by the way. But it's absolutely true. We can't do all these things alone. Collaboration is huge for this. So Professor Aremu, we'd love to get your insights on this.
Yes, Madam has already thrown the question before you. So 2 women on only Aremu alone. That's okay. I will see what I can do. SME is very key to our industrial development, to the success of African Continental Free Trade Area. A study conducted by what do you call them, the SMIDA sometimes ago, shows that about 96% of companies operating in Nigeria are SMEs. 96%. I was afraid. 96%. That is how huge it is. But have we given attention to them enough? My sister Adesua have said no. Why? They need capacity to upgrade. You see, there's a difference between SME and startup. A startup is a company that is starting to go up, particularly those in ITs. A small company that is starting as an IT today, when given the opportunity, within 4 or 5 years, you are going to be earning millions of dollars. So we need to be able to have, as we have SME, we can have policy on startups. These are companies that you can create them today, but they have a very fast method of growing. How will they grow? Back to the question my sister sent to me. On the African Continental Free Trade Area, huge opportunity. They can be vertically integrated, either backward or forward, into other countries. Forward integration means they are selling their product. Backward integration means that they are collecting input for their product in terms of manufacture or any other thing from other African countries. God is a God of knowledge. He discovered that I did not put the same thing in the same thing in all the countries. He put different resources. There are certain resources in which it can be produced better in Senegal, but the usage of it in industrial manufacturing is better in Nigeria. So there can be practical economic integration. That's number one. Number two, if there can be outsourcing of opportunities. Certain things you will want to produce, but somebody can produce it for you. And then it's still your product, but you outsource it. So maybe it's going to consume you of certain resources more than the other person. You outsource a cheaper a producer agent to produce for you. And lastly, is the type of subcontracting activities. Subcontracting activities can exist across Africa. So these are the kind of opportunity we need to expose to all these SMEs. And when you now come to SME services, the opportunity is extremely very huge. Extremely very huge. All these kind of small business we are talking about, America recognizes it, and that is why they have SBA, small business, okay, across the country, and they supported them a lot. The SBA received so much incentive for their production activity in Africa up to today. Are we doing the same thing? Well, we are doing something, but it's not enough. Not enough in the sense that many of the small companies are dying, either as a result of overtax. And I'm happy government is trying to harmonize this tax. I have a small activity in Abuja here where I'm staying. And you discover every day the AMAC, Abuja Municipal, something that are collecting, they come and line up. I say, okay, stay all of you. When you collect your money at the gate, then people are coming. After you collect your money, you can go. Let your person start collecting. But we are not making the money you are asking for. This is it. There should be a way of harmonizing policies, not to discourage small and business enterprises. A situation in which you don't recognize that one, and then you use your own fiscal policy to kill them, the monetary policy itself is not good enough to give a very good interest rate. How will they survive? Lastly, since Adam made a mistake, God said that everybody that will be born, right, must actually start to be a small person. So small is not a disease, it's a starting point. But it is small that grows to an adult. But again, there must be infrastructure to support it. I'm quoting the same scripture again. God himself, when he was creating the whole world, he said, let there be light. If there's no light, what will God see? He produced light before he produced any other thing. And when he finished day one, he said, God saw it was good. Day two, God saw it was good. Until day 7. If there's no light, what will God see? So there is need. If we are not wiser than God, there is need to be able to have electricity. Just as one of our speakers actually said, light is very important for small and medium-scale enterprises, even for large corporations as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I was starting to hear a biblical sermon towards the end, but it's absolutely true. We have to start somewhere. And we have what we need. We have the resources, we have people. A lot of it is about having the drive and the motivation to put all these things together. And I'm very conscious of time, so we'll start rounding up. We didn't really get a chance to talk really about tax incentives, for instance, but we've discussed SME growth. We've talked about the AFCTA, we've talked about talent development and need to develop it more. And really just, I'd like your parting words. If there's anything you want to share to the audience about sustainable industrial policy, what would that be? What can we do to really move the needle in this area? Adesua?
Sustainable industrial policy. We have to be a country that when we put a policy in place, so for instance, the free zone enterprises are entitled to tax holidays and certain tax exemptions if they're in a free trade zone area. Now, with the new tax bill being proposed, these exemptions are at risk of being taken away. This will send a very concerning signal to enterprises and zone managers like ourselves, because it means that all the investment that has taken place, for instance, in Lagos Free Zone, we have about $2.75 billion investment. All that investment is threatened. We have a pipeline of companies, enterprises, industries, who want to come to Nigeria, who want to come into this free zone with an integrated deep sea port so that it becomes a transshipment hub to the rest of Africa. All this is being threatened. And we have to pull together and realize Nigeria is better if we have these kind of special economic zones to be able to attract the kind of investment that we need to become the country that we need to become. So what do we need? We need to have sustainable industrial policies that we put our hearts behind, that we adhere to, and that we continue to improve. You have to reward people for coming to invest in Nigeria. You have other opportunities to invest, but you choose to come here with a higher risk, with the uncertainty, with some of the insecurity, and then you've created these economic zones like Lagos Free Zone, where you have all the infrastructure that you required, compressed natural gas, you have everything in place, you have a deep sea port, and then you're at risk of being taken away. What do? We have to be thinking more of the future. We have to be thinking of sustainability. We have to be putting our footprints down for generations to come. And that's what we represent. And that's what we want the country to help us to achieve. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. That's beautifully wrapped up, Adesua. Thank you so much. And of course, last word, because I see Otto hovering. If we could just have 1 minute from Professor Aremu. Final words, final thoughts on the topic.
Thank you. I think my sister have just said what I wanted to say. And that is by defining sustainability. Sustainability is a consumption that you are doing now, but will not actually deny the future people from having consumption opportunities as well. Whatever things we are doing now, the concept of sustainability should be put into it to make sure that it will not destroy the future economy. So on this, our industrial policy, that is to say that whatever industrial policy that we have to put in place in Nigeria, in Africa, synchronizing with trade policy and investment policy, must be the one that is going to be sustainable to the future development of the country and to the future development of Africa. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much to our amazing panelists, Adesua Ladoja, Professor Aremu, and of course, Dr. Silk. Very grateful for LBS for the platform. And thank you all in the audience for your fabulous comments. And I'll hand it back over to Otto.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isioma Otomi. Thank you very much, Adesua, Professor Jonathan Aremu. It's been a very interesting, insightful session. Thank you for sharing from your wealth of knowledge and experience. Thank you very much. And please, a round of applause for the esteemed panelists and the moderator. We'll quickly move on to the next presentation, which will be done by the Regenerative Agriculture Project Manager and Sustainability Analyst of Olam Agri. He would be presenting a case presentation with title Regenerative Agriculture and Farmer Capacity Building. He's none other than our distinguished Mante Kutando. With a warm round of applause, make him feel welcome. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank everyone for being here. As Otto already mentioned, I'm Mante Kutando, Region for Agriculture Lead at Olam Agri, based out of Abuja, Nigeria. So, maybe unfortunately, the transition was a topic more in transport, but we'll be focusing now on agriculture and a good agricultural practice related to agriculture with our smallholder farmers. So I'll be sharing my screen. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. The case presentation is about regenerative agriculture and the farmer capacity building. So here I will present a specific project that Olam Agri is implementing right now in one of our value chain in Chad. The project title is Increasing the Adoption of Regenerative Agriculture Practice through Farmers Training and Implementation of Thematic Field Schools. This content will be following to present this case study. Before dive in the project itself, since regenerative agriculture is a new topic when it comes to agri-industrial sector, it's important to give an overview about what is regenerative agriculture and how important is regenerative agriculture in agri-food sector, and then how regenerative agriculture can contribute to sustainability when it comes to production with smallholder farmers. So normally regenerative agriculture is not a new technology at all. It's pop up first around 1970, where people started becoming more aware about the concern about environment. But at some point, that terminology just lost, but came back again around 2015. So it's becoming very interesting topic for agribusiness sector, since the definition or the targets of regenerative agriculture can allow them to reach their target also by reducing the impacts on environmental components. Here we are talking about soils, we are talking about air and water, and also reducing greenhouse emission. But there is something that we need to know is like regenerative agriculture definition is different from a business to another, from an organization to another. So at Olam Agri, to be able to know that you are working to our sustainability targets, we define what is regenerative agriculture. So regenerative agriculture for Olam Agri is a set of principles that work together to restore soil health, protect the climate, and sustain livelihood. So our principles are minimize soil disturbance, keep soil covered, keep living room in soils, favor organic input sources, maximize farm biodiversity, and also enhance the synergy between livestock and crops. So that's our principle. And then at Olam Agri, for us, principles are general, but practice are context specific. So what are the efforts we are doing at Olam Agri when it comes to regenerative agriculture? So as you all know, Olam Agri work in different countries, and then we have mainly two value chain. So the direct value chain, where we work directly closely with farmers, we engage farmers, we train farmers, we support them and also give them inputs. There we put the direct value chain, and then there we implement all our projects. And here I will focusing more on some of projects we have regarding regenerative agriculture, and also in the right supply chain that we have at Olam Agri. So in Togo, for example, we have projects on regenerative agriculture with University of SSA, British Academic, to understand how farmers perceive regenerative agriculture. So since it is new terminology, is it something that farmer understand? Is it something that farmer are worried about, but not the terminology, but practices? So there the project is also ongoing, In Cote d'Ivoire, we have different projects, soil moisture conservation projects, where we understood the soil health status by implementing different strategy lab for analyzing soil. Even right now in Africa, our business in Cote d'Ivoire is the first that's got regenerative agriculture certification. So we demonstrate that we are implementing different practices and then got the certification. In Nigeria, we have different projects, different activity around with our systemic farmers, rice farmers and wheat farmers. To mention one, we are promoting sustainable rice standards. So sustainable rice standard is standard that can also consider as a standard that can allow business to move to agriculture in rice cultivating system. So we also have a climate smart wheat trial, as in the last panel, people already discussed about climate and then how farmers can also adapt to climate change. And there we are trying to understand and define a climate resilient wheat that we can use to promote a wheat farming and then help farmers to adapt more climate change. And in chart in our value chain and then the project that I will be presenting here, we have different projects, and one of them is climate resilient ingredient cotton production. So same as all the project, the topic and then target is to support farmers with regenerative agriculture practice to be able to adapt and also improve their livelihoods. Now, the project that I will be presenting is about strengthening the adoption of regenerative agriculture practice through farmers training and implementation. That project also is ongoing in charge. So the objective, I won't normally take them here, but because I am aware that all of us, we know all the challenge that our farmers are having, climate change challenge, like the way the temperature are increasing, the way the precipitation become very uncertain, and also the way farmers are also exposed to drought in different environments. So I want to spend more time here. And also the way the crop that our farmers are producing is important for the economy and also for their livelihoods. So all of this are the justification of the project. So now, what's the objective of the project? The objective of the project is first to train. Here we are talking about regenerative agriculture. And I already mentioned that is kind of new terminology, but when it comes to practical side, it's not new thing for farmers regenerative agriculture to let you know. Regenerative agriculture is what they are already doing as practice. And sometimes people ask, what's the difference between regenerative agriculture and good agricultural practice? If good agricultural practice is there and farmers are already implementing good agricultural practice, are they doing regenerative agriculture? So to answer that rhetorical question, like regenerative agricultural practice is good agricultural practice, but regenerative agriculture as a system is different from good agricultural practice or sustainable agriculture because of the targets behind the way regenerative agriculture is assessed in the field. The way regenerative agriculture is monitored in the field is different from sustainable agriculture, climate smart agriculture, and other agricultural systems. So here it's important now to understand the philosophy behind it, to train field staff and farmers, because when it comes to regenerative agriculture, the target is to put in place that holistic approach, not just implementing good agricultural practice, but you should also, or the farmer should also consider the holistic approach by implementing at least 3 practices according to the context where, or according to the place where he's implementing his activities. So the target is to train on practice, to develop we discuss about how farmer, or in others panel, they discuss about how we're able to escalate all the practice or escalate what farmers are learning. And here, the projects, we try to implement the projects around what we call farm field schools. So farm field school, as the name means, is a school where all the farmer will be trained by implementing a new technology or a new practice that's introduced in the area. So here the third target now is to implement and strengthen the soil health and biodiversity management practice in the farm field school. That said, the project components, we have three components following the same logic as the targets. Training farmers on the good agricultural practice around farm field schools, and then strengthening soil health, because when it comes to regenerative agriculture, the entry point is soil health. Not only soil health, but the entry point is the soil health, because we know that the soil is the support of our crop. So if the soil is the support of a crop, everything we'll be doing is, the first one is to take care of the soil, to have our soil healthy. So here, all the regenerative agriculture practice that we are introducing will be implementing in the farm field schools by a farmer trained by a field staff. So there, have a peer farmer that will coordinate all the activity around that field school. So the field schools, we have the number of 25 to 30 farmers around that field to learn about a new technology, even to improve what they are already doing. As I say, regenerative agriculture is not a new thing for them normally. Regenerative agriculture practice, I want to say, is not a new thing for them normally, to improve what they already know and then to learn a new topic or a new practice. So the strategy is around these three components: training, learning space or learning place, and also implementing all the practice that they learn there. And then after that, they can go back to their field to implement what they learn. Now, as I said, regenerative agriculture is holistic approach. So is it something that we just need to go in the field and start doing the good agricultural practice? The answer is no. The important thing is like to understand the practice that farmers are implementing there, and now combine this practice as a package that can allow them to easily implement it, because here is like you want to be cost effective, to reduce all the energy that they are using, but to impact more the soils, the biodiversity, and even their livelihood. So in each region where the project is ongoing, we identify, according to the context, the package that can be suitable for the zone. But not forgetting that farmers are already doing something, what we call good agricultural practice. So for this project, we identified 4 models or 4 packages that we are popularizing in the farm field schools. So we have the model 1 based on anti-erosion structure. So erosion is one of the biggest problems in Africa. So farmers should know how to fight against erosion to be able to maintain their soil healthy. So there is a model. So the model is based first on anti-erosion structure. That means this type of model cannot be implemented where farmers are not facing erosion challenge. So we identify where farmers are facing erosion challenge and then put the package, and then the package is based on that. But also the package, the good things is here, the package is not something new. We just put the package to introduce in the technique itinerary that farmers are already using. For example, at the beginning, they start maybe sowing, preparing the land, doing like organic compost or what they are doing. But here, if we want to implement erosion control measure in that specific area, we are just putting the practice in the calendar they are already following. So it won't be a new thing to disturb their way to work. So that's the logic behind the way we are implementing the project. So we developed like that 4 models. Models based on IPM, integrated pest management, model based on crop rotation, and model based on organic fertilizer. So there you will see under these models, we have nursery production that will help farmers to do agroforestry in that farm fish school, life aid, and assisted natural regeneration. For example, for the second model, you still have a cover plant or intercropping. For example, the one good thing that also we introduced is the model 3, crop rotation, because we know that cotton is not a consumption edible crop. So we should be able to support the farmers by also combining food security and also soil health. Here in the project, we give to the farmers copy seeds where they will use to multiply seed for the project. So they have 1 hectare where they are producing this copy. And the logic behind is the next year, the cotton fields will move now to where they already plant copy. So first, the farmer is benefiting from the seeds to eat or to sell to have cash. And the soil also is benefiting from the impact, the positive impact copy as a crop that can improve soil health. So there is also a model based on that strategy where we put different copy fields in parallel with cotton fields. So for organic fertilizer, supporting farmers in biochar and bokashi, how to produce biochar, how to produce bokashi, and then how to use them together to activate the biochar. Results of the first year of implementation is we are able to implement about 79 farm field schools. So we don't really have for place for picture, but it was really nice. And this field school, like I said, are there. The way the project work is to identify them, because the business already work with farmers using the strategy, field school strategy is something they are doing. But the new strategy where we are developing here is to use all the practice that we want to introduce in their calendar. Training, we train about 180 field staff and about 2,000 farmers. And you can see the picture, the way farmers can fight against erosion control area by treating the gule, the way they can produce biochar, natural pesticide using locally available resources, and bokashi. So as some of lesson learned from this first year of implementation, we are highlighting the way farm field schools are really, really important when it comes to introduce new strategy amongst farmers, and also a peer learning, because as we know, farmers really like to learn from their peers. You can be the best agronomist in the world if the farmer didn't see that what you are bringing to me can improve what I'm already doing. The farmer cannot do it. So farm field school is one of, I can say, the entry points, like capacity building is the entry point of regenerative agriculture, I can say, in parallel of with soil health. So The second thing also that we need to mention here is important before implementing any regenerative agriculture strategy with farmers to understand the context, because the principles are there and say that, okay, cover crop like a principle as to cover the soil is the regenerative agriculture principle. But how the farmer can cover its soil, that can depend on the context where the farmer is growing his crops. So it's important to understand all the practice, how the farmer is doing it, all the barrier of the adoption of that practice, to be able to have a package of practice that we can introduce in the farmer systems. So the baseline is really important when it comes to introduce a new package of technology with farmers. And one of the lessons learned is, yes, there is impacts of regenerative agriculture on the yields when the farmers are well organized around the farm field school, when all the practices are well developed. Yes, there's impact. And right now, we are at the harvesting stage. And then the projection is, with our farm field school, we are able to increase about 2% of the yield comparing to what farmers are doing, and comparing to some of normal farm field school that are not following the same approach that we are promoting in this project. So that's what I had to share with you, and available for all your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Bante, for that interesting presentation. Thank you for highlighting the transformative power of regenerative agriculture, and for, letting us know the importance of farmers' capacity building. Thank you, and a warm round of applause for Bante Kutando. We'll quickly move on right away to the next presentation, which is the summary of learnings. And that's going to be championed by the Sustainability Manager of British American Tobacco and Members, BAT. BAT, that's a very unique and significant acronym so far as Nigeria is concerned. BAT, but in this case, it's British American Tobacco. None other than Favour Obioma. With a warm round of applause, let's welcome her. Over to you, Favour.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon from here. Standing on all existing protocol. I'm so glad to be here, and it's a privilege and an honor to be the one to give the summary of learnings. I would say, and I'm sure a lot of people agree with me, this has been insightful. It has been full, right? There's been so much knowledge that has been shared, and I hope, like myself, who has taken a lot of notes, you have as well, and you're able to not just keep those notes in your notepad or wherever it is that you've put them down, but to implement, right? So what I'm going to be doing in the short time that I have is to share the learnings that I have gotten from all of the sessions, starting from the speeches, the keynote speeches, to the panel discussions, and even wrapping up with the presentation that we just had. So basically, I think it's been very clear to everyone. What has stood out for me particularly is how sustainability is critical in building or the development of our economy, or the building of any nation. And it shows, that it spans across every sector, not just, the primary sector or the secondary sector, across every sector. And we need to, take learnings and values from sustainability and implement, across board. Like Professor Ogbeche and Mr. Zuberi mentioned, Africa is a continent of vast social and natural capital. And I'm not going to go into the details, as they've already mentioned how much mineral resources we have that are left untouched. The renewable energy, just mind-blowing how we have 11 tons or terawatts of solar capacity that has not been, utilized, right? And that's just a bit of it. Also speaking to the population that we have, like some of the speakers have already mentioned, right? Compared to other nations or compared to other continents, we have, that social capital that, we're not fully maximizing at this point, right? And for me, the key points that I got, or I sort of like captioned them across the various sections, right? For the first keynote point speeches that were given, I captured it as mindset shift, right? So we have to move from where we are a continent that we're totally reliant or mostly reliant on other continents or developed nations, to solve our problems. We need to move to a state where we are building resources or creating resources within ourselves, like Mr. Zuberi mentioned, right? We have so much capacity, and we need to tap from, that capacity. He also mentioned, taking ownership and being intentional about leadership, right? So we need obviously to move from where we are depending on other people or other nations, to lead us, right? Because like he mentioned, which was very key, is that it's normally the saying goes, he who wears the shoes knows where it pinches, right? We are Africans and we understand, where the pain points are, right? So we can't expect, outsiders, no matter how well intentioned they are, to understand what those pain points are, right? So we know our unique circumstances, and we need to build on those circumstances to address whatever issues that we are having, right? So like he said, we don't need to stabilize what's failing. We need to have a growth mindset, understand, what our resources are, understand what our potentials are, and, capitalize on them. And in speaking on taking ownership, moving into the panel sessions, both panel sessions, where there seemed to be like a synergy in the content or the discussion or the subject matter, right? Because they both merged in speaking about like the key points, right? And in being intentional, it showed to me that every arm or every person or every sector has their responsibility, right? So starting with the government, a lot was said regarding, having policies that are sustainable, right, and are able to create sustainable value across board, right? And while Femi mentioned having a Voltron system, it just came to me, I don't know, just having like an Avenger system, right? Creating an Avenger system where, like Ma'am Victoria said, we need to have a targeted approach. First of all, what problems are we trying to solve, right? Yes, we have a myriad of problems that we have mentioned, and we have a myriad of policies that we have put out there, but what exactly are we trying to solve? Are we clear on the directive? Once we are clear on the directive, we can build, an Avenger system where we can start streamlining, and cutting off unnecessary policies, cutting off unnecessary arms that are not required and are not doing anything, and focus on the key points, right? So like, according to Femi's Voltron system, mine is the Avenger system, right? Because for the Avengers, their major problem was Thanos, and they knew what their problem was and they addressed it, right? So that's what we need to have. We need to have policies that are addressing the issues and targeting the problems. Stakeholders, like Ma'am Victoria mentioned, across the various sectors, the public sector, the private sector, that understand the pain points, right, and are able to address the problems. The other point that was particularly mentioned a lot or emphasized on was funding. We cannot reap the benefits of a system if we don't invest in it, right? And if we don't have, incentives or mechanisms that help to drive, the solutions that we are garnering for, right? So the government, if we have government agents on this call that have some influence on the decision making, we're asking, and from the conversation that has been had, we need to have funding, right? Appropriate funding that addresses, the needs of, the solutions that we are seeing, the SMEs, right? From the study that was mentioned, 95% of the continent is actually built on SMEs. That's a lot. That's to say a lot, right? So we need to focus and create funding channels, blended financing for our organizations, right? And then the other bit that was mentioned in both panel sessions as well was infrastructure across board, right? All forms of infrastructure, from the transportation system to the power system, to data, right? To the IT system. We need infrastructure to be built. It is essential to building, a nation, a wholesome nation. We don't want maybe one sector of the economy working. We want all five sectors of our economy working, right? So we need funding, we need infrastructure, and the other bit, which I'll stop on for the government's responsibility, is education, right? This, I can't emphasize on this enough. We need quality education. We're tired of saying, and we're moving from a generation where we just let things or a state, no, I don't want to say generation, right? So it doesn't feel like I'm targeting a particular generation, but moving from a state where we just let things slide to where we have an uprising of people that are asking questions. Young people, the baby boomers, we have even the millennials, the Gen Zs, asking questions. What's going on, right? Not everybody wants to jackpot, right? We still have people who love the continent and are looking for ways to add value, right? So education is very key, and not just book knowledge, right? We're looking for transferable skills, like Professor and our professor mentioned, please, I don't want to mispronounce your name, so I'm not going to, but our professor mentioned in the second panel about, how Covenant University emphasizes on EDS. That is key, and we need to push for it across all our institutions, right? So it's not just textbook knowledge, right? What transferable skills are we teaching our people, our students, our young individuals, and not just from the tertiary point. We need to start from the roots up, right? So from the young children, right? What's the quality? We need to validate the information and the knowledge that we're passing across, right? So that's one bit. And then sensitization on the things that are actually happening, the solutions that organizations like Olam, organizations that like Nestle are providing, right? Femi's organization. People need to know about it. Yes, I'm going to the individual point, right? But for the government point, the government needs to help in sensitizing our people, right? To say it's not just the expert traits, right, that know these things. We actually have people that are qualified. Yes, we say there's a knowledge gap, but we have people, we have individuals, we have organizations that are qualified, certified, and have this knowledge, this technical know-how know-how, and are building solutions, are building, massive, systems, right? So the government needs to encourage, apart from the funding, apart from infrastructure, they also need to share this knowledge and sensitize, the masses on that, because that would help to boost, or encourage upcoming individuals that want to add solution or create solution or value in our system. And then that's for the government. Yeah, I'm moving then to the second aspect, which is the PPP that was mentioned, the public-private partnership. A lot was said on collaboration, and I can't emphasize on it enough, right? We need collaboration. Like Femi said, we may not be able to have a small scale enterprises or small scale holders or farmers, create such value enough to end or enable food security, right? We may not be able to have that. So what's the solution? Clustering, right? That's what was mentioned. So as much as we can and as much as possible, it's very important that we create systems, or platforms of market linkage that connect the value chain, right? So if there's an organization, an SME that can do a particular thing, we need to be able to outsource and subcontract, subcontract needs to other SMEs that can help with that. So I don't speak too much. For PPP, we also have their part to play. They also have their part to play in conducting monitoring and evaluation. And apart from that, pulling funds together, right? And that's part of like the blended finance that Mr. Zuberi talked about, right? Pulling funds together to enable the smaller scale organizations. And then last bit is the individuals. What role do you have to play? I think the first bit is having a mindset shift, right? How do you have a mindset shift? You have to have knowledge. You have to learn. You have to expose yourself, right? So don't just go with the narrative that, oh, Africa is a failed continent, or Nigeria or Kenya or whatever is not working, right? How much do you know? Don't just follow the bandwagon, right? You need to know for yourself, right? So equip your mind, embrace a mindset shift, learn, and then you would be able to see, what the pain points are and how to provide value. And I think the last point I would leave with us that was mentioned is that some solutions, I think that was from Jeron. Apologies, I'm sorry, that's not how to pronounce your name, but he mentioned, that there's some solutions that actually don't require much funding, and I totally agree, right? So yes, it's good to have big dreams, but you also have to consider that you need to start small, right? So look for solutions that actually do not require so much as investment, and start from there. So that I would end with that. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Favor Obioma. That was really detailed. I don't think it could have been done any better. Thank you very much, and a round of applause to Favor. At this juncture, I would take some announcements, and then we will move into the masterclass session. So to everyone that registered for the masterclass session, please, after the announcement and after a brief video that will be playing now, the video is put together by our partner, Nestle. And Nestle is a shining example of sustainability best practice in Nigeria. We apologize for not playing the video earlier on because we were running behind schedule. So after the announcement, the video would begin to play, and then those that registered for the masterclass should do well to join the masterclass because the facilitators are waiting. Yes, also remember to join the second day's session, that is tomorrow. The conference continues tomorrow, same time, and the recordings of all the sessions from today and tomorrow will be sent to every registered member. So on that note, I want to thank you all, the panelists, the speakers, moderators, the organizers, the management team, the organizing team, Lagos Business School and Lagos Business School Sustainability Center, the change makers, the social reformers, the best case presenters, and most importantly to our most distinguished audience and attendees from across the world, wherever you're attending. Thank you all very much, and over to the technical and media team to play the Nestle video. Thank you, and that's been my time as your host. Thank you. Yes, I think the technical guys are putting things in place to get the video playing for us. Yes, apologies for the delay. Apologies for the delay. I think it's right up. So immediately after the video, those that registered for the masterclass session should do well to join because the facilitators are waiting. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day. And see you tomorrow. Bye. Yes, apologies, guys. It seems we're having some technical issues with regards to the sound. So let's just move over to the masterclass, and then the video will be played tomorrow. The information in the video is very important, so do well to join tomorrow, and the video will be played tomorrow. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.